Hi, welcome back to Emerald Lake. My name's Raven. There's an ad that's about to start, but once after it rolls, I'll be reading the Master Maid for my first story tonight. And again, if you have any trigger requests or if you want to chat, put those in between stories, and whatever the chat is doing, is asking, that's what we'll be leaning towards tonight. Thank you for all of the frog drop. 1, 2, 3. Wait, did we get all 5 frogs now? Does that mean that the emotes are all set? Oh, Avatar being funny there. Did the emotes sort themselves out? Where is it? I will find this. I hope all the frogs have dropped. Where is it? Aha. Sip the tea. We still have the last one waiting, but you have Pout Frog. Isn't he a little sass? I just realized that he was okayed. The last one is animated, and so it'll be very fun. But yay, okay, at least we have those. Oh, and I guess the ad has rolled, so that is done. We can move on to stories. Alright. Then I can just do that. Yee! The Master Maid. Alright. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a king who had many sons. I do not exactly know how many there were, but the youngest of them could not stay quietly at home, and was determined to go out into the world and try his luck. And after a long time, the king was forced to give him leave to go. When he had traveled about for several days, he came to a giant's house, and hired himself to the giant as a servant. In the morning the giant had to go out to pasture his goats, and as he was leaving the house he told the king's son that he must clean out the stable. And after you've done that, he said, you need not do any more work today, for you have come to a kind master, and that you shall find. But what I set you to do must be done both well and thoroughly, and you must on no account go into any of the rooms which lead out of the room in which you slept last night. If you do, I will take your life. Well, to be sure, he is an easy master, said the prince to himself as he walked up and down the room humming and singing, for he had thought there would be plenty of time left to clean out the stable. But it would be amusing to steal a glance into his other rooms as well, thought the prince, but there must be something that he is afraid of my seeing, as I am not allowed to enter them. So he went into the first room. A cauldron was hanging from the walls. It was boiling, but the prince could see no fire under it. I wonder what is inside it, he thought, and dipped a lock of his hair in, and the hair became just as if it were all made of copper. That's a nice kind of soup. If anyone were to taste that, his throat would be gilded, said the youth, and then he went into the next chamber. There, too, a cauldron was hanging from the wall, bubbling and boiling, but there was no fire under this either. I will just try what this is like too, said the prince, thrusting another lock of his hair into it, and it came out silver. Such costly soup is not to be had in my father's palace, said the prince, but everything depends on how it tastes. And then he went into the third room. There, too, a cauldron was hanging from the wall, boiling exactly the same as in the other 2 rooms. and the prince took pleasure in trying this also. So he dipped a lock of hair in, and it came out so brightly gilded that it shone again. "Some talk about going from bad to worse," said the prince, "but this is better and better. If he boils gold here, what can he boil in there?" He was determined to see, and went through the door into the fourth room. No cauldron was to be seen there, but on a bench someone was seated who was like a king's daughter. Whoever she was so beautiful that never in the prince's life had he seen her equal. "Oh, in heaven's name, what are you doing here?" said she who sat upon the bench. "I took the place of servant here yesterday." May you soon have a better place, if you have come to serve here," said she. "Oh, but I think I have got a kind master," said the prince. "He has not given me hard work today. When I have cleaned out the stable, I shall be done." "Yes, but how will you be able to do that?" she asked again. "If you clean it out as other people do, 10 pitchforks full will come in for every one you throw out. But I will teach you how to do it. You must turn your pitchfork upside down and work with the handle, and then all will fly out in its own accord." "Yes, I will attend to that," said the prince, and stayed sitting where he was the whole day, for it soon settled between them that they would marry each other, and he and the king's daughter. So the first day of his service with the giant did not seem long to him, but when evening was drawing near, she said that it would now be better for him to clean out the stable before the giant came home. When he got there, he had a fancy to try if what she said were true, so he began to work in the same way that he had seen the stable boys doing in his father's stables. But he soon saw that he must give it up, for when he had worked a very short time, he had scarcely any room left to stand. So he did what the princess had taught him, turned the pitchfork round and worked with the handle, and in the twinkling of an eye the stable was as clean as if it had been scoured. When he had done that, he went back again into the room in which the giant had given him leave to stay, and there he walked backward and forward on the floor and began to hum and sing. Then came the giant home with the goats. "Have you cleaned the stable?" asked the giant. "Yes, now it is clean and sweet, master," said the king's son. "I shall see about that," said the giant, and went round to the stable, but it was just as the prince had said. "You have certainly been talking to my master maid, for you never got that out of your own head," said the giant. "Master maid? What kind of a thing is that, master?" said the prince, making himself look as stupid as an ass. "I should like to see that." "Well, you will see her quite soon enough," said the giant. On the second morning the giant had again to go out with his goats, so he told the prince that on that day he was to fetch home his horse, which was out on the mountainside, and when he had done that he might rest himself for the remainder of the day. "For you have come to a kind master, and that you shall find," said the giant once more. "But do not go into any of the rooms that I spoke of yesterday, or I will wring your head off," said he, and then he went away with his flock of goats. "Yes, indeed, you are a kind master," said the prince, "but I will go in and talk to the master maid again. Perhaps before long she may like me better than yours." So he went to her. Then she asked him what he had to do that day. "Oh, not very dangerous work, I fancy," said the king's son. "I have only to go up the mountainside after his horse." "Well, how do you mean to set about it?" asked the master maid. "Oh, there is no great art in riding a horse home," said the king's son. "I think I must have ridden friskier horses before now." "Yes, but it is not so easy a thing, you think, to ride the horse home," said the master maid, "but I will teach you what to do. When you go near it, fire will burst out of its nostrils like flames from a pine torch. But be very careful, and take the bridle which is hanging by the door there, and fling the bit straight into its jaws, and then it will come Then it will become so tame that you will be able to do what you like with it." He said he would bear this in mind, and then he again sat in there the whole day by the Master Maid, and they chatted and talked of one thing and another. But the first thing and the last now was, how happy and delightful it would be if they could marry each other and get safely away from the giant. And the prince would have forgotten both the mountainside and the horse if the Master Maid had not reminded him of them as evening drew near, and said that now it would be better if he went to fetch the horse before the giant came. So he did this, and took the bridle which was hanging on a crook, and strode up the mountainside, and it was not long before he met with the horse, and fire and red flames streamed forth out of its nostrils. But the youth carefully watched his opportunity, and just as it was rushing at him with open jaws, he threw the bit straight into its mouth, and the horse stood as quiet as a young lamb, and there was no difficulty at all in getting it home to the stable. Then the prince went back into his room again and began to hum and sing. Toward evening the giant came home. "Have you fetched the horse back from the mountainside?" he asked. "That I have, master. It was an amusing horse to ride, but I rode him straight home and put him in the stable too," said the prince. "I will see about that," said the giant, and went out to the stable, but the horse was standing there just as the prince had said. You have certainly been talking with my Master Maid, for you never got that out of your own head," said the giant again. "Yesterday, master, you talked about this Master Maid, and today you are talking about her. Ah, heaven bless you, master! Why will you not show me the thing? For it would be a real pleasure to me to see it." And the prince, who again pretended to be silly and stupid. "Oh, you will see her quite soon enough," said the giant. On the morning of the third day, the giant again had to go into the wood with the goats. "Today you must go underground and fetch my taxes," he said to the prince. "When you have done this, you may rest for the remainder of the day, for you shall see what an easy master you have come to." And then he went away. "Well, however easy a master you may be, you set me very hard work to do," thought the prince. "But I will see if I cannot find your Master Maid. You say she is yours, but for all that she may be able to tell me what to do now." And he went back to her. So when the Master Maid asked him what the giant had set him to do that day, he told her that he was to go underground and get the taxes. "And how will you set about that?" said the Master Maid. "Oh, you must tell me how to do it," said the prince, "for I have never yet been underground, and even if I knew the way, I do not know how much I am to demand." "Oh yes, I will soon tell you that. You must go to the rock there under the mountain ridge, and take the club that is there and knock on the rocky wall," said the Master Maid. "Then someone will come out who will sparkle with fire. You shall tell him your errand, and when he asks you how much you want to have, you are to say, 'As much as I can carry.'" "Yes, I will keep that in mind," said he, and then he sat there with the Master Maid the whole day until night drew near, and he would gladly have stayed there till now if the Master Maid had not reminded him that it was time to be off to fetch the taxes before the giant came. So he set out on his way and did exactly what the Master Maid had told him. He went to the rocky wall and took the club and knocked on it. Then came one so full of sparks that they flew both out of his eyes and his nose. "What do you want?" said he. "I was to come here for the giant and demand the tax for him," said the king's son. "How much are you to have then?" said the other. "I ask for no more than I am able to carry with me," said the prince. "It is well for you that you have not asked for a horse load," said he who had come back out of the rock, "but now come in with me." This the prince did, and what a quantity of gold and silver he saw! It was lying inside the mountain like heaps of stones in a waste place, and he got a load that was as large as he was able to carry, and with that he went on his way. So in the evening, when the giant came home with the goats, the prince went into the chamber and hummed and sang again as he had done on the other 2 evenings. "Have you been for the tax?" said the giant. "Yes, that I have, master," said the prince. "Where have you put it, then?" said the giant again. "The bag of gold is standing there on the bench," said the prince. "I will see about that," said the giant, and went away to the bench. But the bag was standing there, and it was so full of gold and silver dropped out when the giant untied the string. "You have certainly been talking with my Master Maid," said the giant, "and if you have, I will wring your neck." "Master Maid?" said the prince. "Yesterday my master talked about this Master Maid, and today he is talking about her again, and the first day of all it was talk of the same kind. I do wish I could see the thing myself," said he. Yes, wait till tomorrow," said the giant, "and then I myself will take you to her." "Ah, master, I thank you, but you are only mocking me," said the king's son. Next day the giant took him to the Master Maid. "Now you shall kill him, and boil him in the great big cauldron you know of, and when you have got the broth ready, give me a call," said the giant. Then he lay down on the bench to sleep, and almost immediately began to snore so that it sounded like thunder among the hills. So the Master Maid took a knife, and cut the prince's little finger, and dropped 3 drops of blood upon a wooden stool. Then she took all the old rags and shoe soles, and all the rubbish she could lay hands on, and put them in the cauldron. And then she filled a chest with gold dust, and a lump of salt, and a water flask, which was hanging by the door. And she also took with her a golden apple and 2 gold chickens. And then she and the prince went away with all the speed they could, and when they had gone a little way they came to the sea. And then they sailed, but where they got the ship from I have never been able to learn. Now when the giant had slept a good long time, he began to stretch himself on the bench on which he was lying. "Will it soon boil?" said he. "It is just beginning," said the first drop of blood on the stool. So the giant lay down to sleep again and slept for a long, long time. Then he began to move about a little again. "Will it soon be ready now?" said he, but he did not look up this time any more than he had done the first time, for he was still half asleep. "Half done," said the second drop of blood, and the giant believed it was the Master Maid again, and turned himself on the bench and lay down to sleep once more. When he had slept again for many hours, he began to move and stretch himself. "Is it not done yet?" said he. "It is quite ready," said the third drop of blood. Then the giant began to sit up and rub his eyes, but he could not see who it was who had spoken to him, so he asked for the Master Maid and called her, but there was no one to give an answer. "Ah, well, she has just stolen out for a little," thought the giant, and he took a spoon and went off to the cauldron to have a taste. But there was nothing in it but shoe soles and rags, and such trumpery as that, and all was boiled up together, so that he could not tell whether it was porridge or milk pottage. When he saw this, he understood what had happened, and fell into such a rage that he hardly knew what he was doing. Yeah, I'm a little confused how he was eating the gold cauldron in the first place, or planning to, but I don't see how shoe soles would be a good soup. Away he went, after the prince and the Master Maid, so fast that the wind whistled behind him, and it was not long before he came to the water, but he could not get over it. Yeah, I guess he must have strong teeth. Well, I will soon find a cure for that. I have only to call my river sucker," said the giant, and he did call him. So this river sucker came and lay down and drank 1, 2, 3 draughts, and with that the water in the sea fell so low that the giant saw the Master Maid and the prince out on the sea in their ship. "Now you must throw out the lump of salt," said the Master Maid, and the prince did so, and it grew into such a great high mountain across the sea that the giant could not come over it, and the river sucker could not drink any more water. Well, I will soon find a cure for that," said the giant. So he called his hill borer to come and bore through the mountain, so that the river sucker might be able to drink up the water again. But just as the hole was made, and the river sucker was beginning to drink, the Master Maid told the prince to throw 1 or 2 drops out of the flask. And when he did this, the sea instantly became full of water again, and before the river sucker could take 1 drink, they reached the land and were in safety. So they determined to go home to the prince's father, but the prince would on no account permit the Master Maid to walk there, for he thought it was unbecoming either for her or for him to go on foot. "Wait here the least little bit of time, while I go home for the 7 horses which stand in my father's stable," said he. "It is not far off, and I shall not be long away, but I will not let my betrothed bride go on foot to the palace." "Oh no, do not go, for if you go home to the king's palace you will forget me. I foresee that." "How could I forget you? We have suffered so much evil together, and love each other so much," said the prince. And he insisted on going home for the coach and the 7 horses, and she was to wait for him there by the seashore. So at last the Master Maid had to yield, for he was so absolutely determined to do it. "But when you get there, you must not even give yourself time to greet anyone, but go straight into the stable and take the horses and put them in the coach, and drive back as quickly as you can, for they will come round about you, but you must behave just as if you did not see them, and on no account must you taste anything, for if you do it will cause great misery to both you and me," she said, and then this he promised. But when he got home to the king's palace, one of his brothers was just going to get married, and the bride and all her kith and kin had come to the palace, so they all thronged round him, and they questioned him about this and that, and wanted him to go in with them, but he behaved as he did not see them, and went straight to the stable, got out the horses, and began to harness them. When they saw that they could not by any means prevail on him to go in with them, they came out to him with meat and drink, and the best of everything that they had prepared for the wedding. But the prince refused to touch anything, and would do nothing but put the horses in as quickly as he could. At last, however, the bride's sister rolled an apple across the yard to him and said, "As you won't eat anything else, you may like to take a bite of that, for you must be both hungry and thirsty after your long journey." And he took up the apple and bit a piece out of it. But no sooner had he got the piece of apple in his mouth than he forgot the Master Maid, and that he was to go back in the coach to fetch her. "I think I must be mad. What do I want with this coach and horses?" said he, and then he put the horses back into the stable and went into the king's palace, and there it was settled that he should marry the bride's sister who had rolled the apple to him. The Master Maid sat by the seashore for a long, long time waiting for the prince, but no prince came. So she went away, and when she had walked a short distance, she came to a little hut which stood all alone in a small wood. Hard by the king's palace. She entered it and asked if she might be allowed to stay there. The hut belonged to an old crone who was also an ill-tempered and malicious troll. At first she would not let the Master Maid remain with her, but at last, after a long time, by means of good words and good payment, she obtained leave. But the hut was dirty and black inside as a pigsty, so the Master Maid said that she would smarten it up a little, and then it might look a little more like what other people's houses looked inside. The old crone did not like this either. She scowled and was very cross, but the Master Maid did not trouble herself about that. She took out her chest of gold and flung a handful of it or so into the fire, and the gold boiled up and poured out over the whole of the hut, till every part of it, both inside and out, was gilded. But when the gold began to bubble up, the old hag grew so terrified that she fled as if evil one himself were pursuing her, and she did not remember to stoop down as she went through the doorway, so she split her head and died. Wow. Next morning the sheriff came traveling by there. He was greatly astonished when he saw the gold hut shining and glittering there in the copse, and he was still more astonished when he went in and caught sight of the beautiful young maiden who was sitting there. He fell in love with her at once, and straightway on the spot He begged her both prettily and kindly to marry him. "Well, but have you a great deal of money?" said the Master Maid. "Ah, yes, so far as that is concerned, I am not ill off," said the sheriff. So now he had to go home to get the money, and in the evening he came back, bringing with him a bag with 2 bushels in it, which he set down on the bench. Well, as he had such a fine lot of money, the Master Maid said she would have him, so they sat down to talk. But scarcely had they sat down together before the Master Maid wanted to jump up again. "I have forgotten to see to the fire," she said. "Why should you jump up to do that?" said the sheriff. "I will do that." So he jumped up and went to the chimney in one bound. Just tell me when you have got hold of the shovel," said the Master Maid. "Well, I have hold of it now," said the sheriff. "Then you may hold the shovel, and the shovel you, and pour red-hot coals over you till day dawns," said the Master Maid. So the sheriff had to stand there the whole night and pour red-hot coals over himself, and no matter how much he cried and begged and entreated, the red-hot coals did not grow the colder for that. When the day began to dawn and he had the power to throw down the shovel, he did not stay long where he was, but ran away as fast as he possibly could, and everyone who met him stared and looked after him, for he was flying as if he were mad, and he could not have looked worse if he had been both flayed and tanned, and everyone wondered where he had been, but for very shame he would tell nothing. Why? Why did she do that to him? I don't understand. The next day the attorney came riding by the place where the Master Maid dwelt. He saw how brightly the hut shone and gleamed through the wood, and he too went in to see who lived there. And when he entered and saw the beautiful young maiden, he fell even more in love with her than the sheriff had done, and began to woo her at once. So the Master Maid asked him, as she had asked the sheriff, if he had a great deal of money. And the attorney said he was not ill off for that, and would at once go home to get it. And at night he came with a big sack of money. This time it was 4-bushel sack, and set it on the bench by the Master Maid. So she promised to have him, and he sat down on the bench by her to arrange about it. But suddenly she said she had forgotten to lock the door of the porch that night, and must do it. "Why should you do that?" said the attorney. "Sit still, I will do it." So he was on his feet in a moment, and out in the porch. "Tell me when you have got hold of the door latch," said the Master Maid. "I have hold of it now," cried the attorney. "Then you may hold the door, and the door you, and you may go between the wall and wall till day dawns." What a dance the attorney had that night! He had never had such a waltz before, and he never wished to have such a dance again. Sometimes he was in front of the door, and sometimes the door was in front of him, and it went from one side of the porch to the other till the attorney was well nigh beaten to death. At first he began to abuse the Master Maid, and then to beg and pray, but the door did not care for anything but keeping him where he was till break of day. This is a lot. Why is she doing this? What is the reasoning for this? Wrong button. Okay, on the 3rd day the bailiff came by. Another person to attack. And he too saw the gold house in the little wood, and he too felt that he must go and see who lived there, and when he caught sight of the Master Maid, he became so much in love with her that he wooed her almost before he greeted her. The Master Maid answered him as if she had answered the other two, that if he had a great deal of money she would have him. Yes, I do. I absolutely do. Look, does had enough money? She would have him. "So far as this is concerned, I am not ill off," said the bailiff. So he was at once told to go home and fetch it, and this he did. Night he came back, and he was a still larger sack of money with him than the attorney had brought. It must have been at least 6 bushels, and he set it down on the bench. So it was settled that he was to have the Master Maid, but hardly had they sat down together before she said that she had forgotten to bring in the calf, and must go to put it in the byre. Okay. No, indeed you shall not do that. Oh, stop jumping, Avatar. No, indeed you shall not do that, said the bailiff. I am the one to do that. And big and fat as he was, okay, so he's a fat bailiff, he went out briskly as a boy. Tell me when you have got hold of the calf's tail, said the Master Maid. I have hold of it now, cried the bailiff. Then may you hold the calf's tail, and the calf's tail hold you, and may you go round the world together till the day dawns. They're just gonna go on an adventure. I think that sounds so far better. Oh no, wait. It says he cries and screams. Okay. So the bailiff had to bestir himself, for the calf went over rough and smooth, over hill and dale, and the more the bailiff cried and screamed, the faster the calf went. When daylight began to appear, well, I mean, based on where they go, if it really is around the world, daylight would take a while to find, probably. Time zones. When it began to appear, the bailiff was half dead, and so glad was he to leave loose of the calf's tail that he forgot the sack of money and all else. Assumedly so did the others, but I don't know. He walked now, slowly, more slowly than the sheriff and the attorney had done, but the slower he went, the more time had everyone to stare and look at him, and they used it too, and no one can imagine how tired out and ragged he looked after his dance with the calf. Well, what the heck? On the following day, the wedding was to take place in the king's palace, and the elder brother was to drive to church with his bride, and the brother who had been with the giant with her sister. What? Elder brother was to drive to the church with his bride, and the brother who had been with the giant with her sister. But when they had seated themselves in the coach and were about to drive off from the palace, one of the trace pins broke, and though they made 1, 2, and 3 to put in its place, that did not help them, for each broke in turn, no matter what kind of wood they used to make them of. This went on for a long time, and they could not get away from the palace, so they were all in great trouble. Then the sheriff said, for he too had been bidden to the wedding at court, "Yonder away in the thicket dwells a maiden, and if you get her to lend you the handle of the shovel she uses to make up her fire, I know very well that it will hold fast." Yeah, so they sent off a messenger to the thicket, and begged so prettily that they might have the loan of her shovel handle, of which the bailiff had spoken, that they were not refused. So now they had a trace pin which would not snap in two. Okay, stop jumping, Avatar. They sent a messenger. They couldn't have sent our peoples. But all at once, just as they were starting, the bottom of the coach fell in pieces. They made a new bottom as fast as they could, but no matter how they nailed it together or what kind of wood they used, no sooner had they got the new bottom into the coach and were about to drive off than it broke again, so that they were still worse off than when they had broken the trace pin. Then the attorney said, for he too was at the wedding in the palace, "Away there in the thicket dwells a maiden, and if you could but get her to lend you 1/2 of her porch door, I am certain that it will hold together." I see where this is going now. It makes a bit of sense. So they again sent a messenger to the thicket and begged so prettily for the loan of the gilded porch door, of which the attorney had told them that they got it at once. They were just setting out again, but now the horses were not able to draw the coach. They had 6 horses already, and now they put in 8, and then 10, and then 12. But the more they put in, the more the coachman whipped them, the less good it did, and the coach never stirred from the spot. It was already beginning to be late in the day. Please stop flying around. What is with that? I don't know what to do about that. It was late in the day, and to the church they must and would go. So everyone who was in the palace was in a state of distress. Then the bailiff spoke up and said, "Out there in the gilded cottage in the thicket dwells a girl, and if you could but get her to lend your calf—" Sorry, to lend you her calf, I know it would draw the coach, even if it were as heavy as a mountain. They all thought that it was ridiculous to be drawn to church by a calf, but there was nothing else for it but to send a messenger once more. Couldn't they walk at this point? And beg as prettily as they could, on behalf of the king, that she would lend them to have the loan of the calf that the bailiff had told them about. The Master Maid let them have it immediately. This time, also, she would not say no. Then they harnessed the calf to see if the coach would move, and away it went, over rough and smooth, over stock and stone, so that they could scarcely breathe, and sometimes they were on the ground and sometimes up in the air. When they came to the church, the coach began to go round and round like a spinning wheel, and it was with the utmost difficulty and danger that they were able to get out of the coach and into the church. And when they went back again, the coach went quicker still, so that most of them did not know how they got back to the palace at all. When they had seated themselves at the table, the prince who had been in service of the giant said that he thought they ought to have invited the maiden who had lent them the shovel handle and the porch door and the calf up to the palace. For, said he, if we had not got these 3 things, we should never have gotten away from the palace. The king also thought that this was both just and proper, so he sent 5 of his best men down to the gilded hut to greet the maiden courteously from the king, and to beg her to be so good as to come up to the palace to dinner at midday. It was only midday? Anyway, greet the king and tell him that, if he is too good to come to me, I am too good to come to him, replied the Master Maid. So the king had to go himself, and the Master Maid went with him immediately, and as the king believed that she was more than she appeared to be, he seated her in the place of honor by the youngest bridegroom. When they had sat at the table for the short time, the Master Maid took out the cook and the hen and the cock and the hen and the golden apple, which she had brought away with her from the giant's house, and set them on the table in front of her. And instantly the cock and the hen began to fight with each other over the golden apple. "Oh, look how those 2 are fighting for the golden apple," said the king's son. "Yes, and so did we 2 fight to get out of that time when we were in the mountain," said the Master Maid. So the prince knew her again, and you may imagine how delighted he was. He ordered the troll witch who had rolled the apple to him to be torn in pieces between 4 and 20 horses. Since when was she a troll or a witch? But also, you were about to marry her. But okay, fine, now you're gonna rip her between 4 and 20? 24. Why do we keep saying 4 and 20 in stories too? Anyway, so that not a bit of her was left. And then for the first time they began really to keep the wedding, and weary as they were, the sheriff, the attorney, and the bailiff kept it up too. What do they mean by keep the wedding and kept it up? But I guess, I suppose they mean actually perform the ceremony, but I thought that they would have done that at the church. Confusing, but alright. Probably despite it being the dinner part at midday, which was supposedly after a long time trying to put the carriage back together. So timelines feel unclear, let's say it that way. But yeah, kept the wedding going is guess what they meant. Oh my gosh, stop flying around. What's strange is that she doesn't move anywhere like that in VTube Studio, but on Twitch she do. So something's happening. I don't know what. It's very weird. Alright. That was the end of the Master Maid. A unique story for sure. The next story I'll do is called Felicia and the Pot of Pinks. Oh, never mind. She just went flying in the VTube studio, and so now, yeah, there she is flying in Twitch. What is with that glitchiness? I don't know. Anyway, any trigger requests, or if you want to chat, I'd love to do that. The next story will be Felicia and the Pot of Pinks, which is such an interesting title. Okay. Death Noah, as you're the most active person, probably the only active person for a little bit. How has your day been? Tell me how you're doing. I'm feeling chatty, so I'm going to demand that. Hi, yes, it's fine. Alright, well, I hope you have a really awesome day soon. Not just fine, but awesome day. I hope you get that. I was very sleepy all day. I don't know why. Just felt that. But I wore a new dress today, and that made me feel nice. I don't always even wear dresses, so wearing a new one was like, oh, okay. I was feeling myself, alright. And I'm very glad that now I'm streaming with my avatar, but you know, I'm a bit annoyed that she still got her issues. It's a lot better though. I'm glad of that. But she's still gonna be a little bit of a problem. Maybe it's because she doesn't have her antlers yet. When she has her antlers, it'll make all the better sense. She'll be her. It'll come together better. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I think the most notable thing is, I think I've got to deal with CPU issues. I don't know all this tech things, but I'm learning. And, I think it's just using a Mac, which not very many VTubers do. And so not enough people are, having the problems and diagnosing them and fixing them yet. But I'll get it. As you say, one stream at a time, I'll get it. Okay. Oh, I realized I didn't update my goals. I'm gonna do that before the next story. Where's the thing? Where's the thing? What the heck? Very confused. Aha, now it's fixed. There we go. Okay. There's the new sub goal. Alright. Oh my gosh, no. Because I put in numbers. I should probably get a new keyboard so that I have, or at least one of those little, I don't know the name of it. One of the little boxes. One of the little pads that has all of the buttons. I don't have one of those. Maybe I should get one of those so that I can have the hotkeys on that. Because now if I ever type a number, it'll do that, because that's where I put all of my hotkeys. Oops. Alright. Felicia and the pot of pinks. Should be fun. Oh yeah, it's all good. You're at least, like, it's all fine if everyone's quiet. I don't mind it. It just feels a little less like you're alone when somebody has some chat, and so I very much appreciate the chats that you do. So I'll poke you a little bit, but you don't have to go outside of your comfort zone for that. I don't think it's right for me to be like, hey, I'm the person that's providing the content, but you do the stuff for me. Like, that's a little backwards. Okay, calm the heck down, Avatar. Stop running around. I don't like this. Okay. Yes, little love frog. Little frog. Wait, don't do that to me. I was putting two things. Ugh. Anyway. Alright, I have to change the title. Felicia and the pot of pinks. Felicia, not Felicia. Okay. Thank you for that emote. I love seeing all these emotes, and I'm very excited to start making my own. If I made more Pokemon emotes, I wouldn't know how I would do that. I'm not a good enough artist, I think, to get them in motion like that, but I could make other dumb little emotes. Yeah, but I'm excited to make my own. That should be very fun. Okay, Felicia. It's also entertaining, the font on this site. The dots over the eyes are like little bitty stars. Yeah, probably would have to commission them, but I wanna make my own as my goal. Was the dots over the eyes on the titles are like little stars, but then in the rest of it, the font is, more normal. It's very funny to watch. Stop running around, model. Chill out. God, it's so rude. Alright. Once upon a time, there was a poor laborer who, feeling that he had not much longer to live, wished to divide his possessions between his son and daughter whom he loved dearly. So he called them to him and said, "Your mother brought me as her dowry 2 stools and a straw bed. I have, besides a hen, a pot of pinks, and a silver ring, which were given me by a noble lady who once lodged in my poor cottage. When she went away, she said to me, 'Be careful of my gifts, good man. See that you do not lose the ring or forget to water the pinks.'" What does that even mean? I guess pink flowers is what they're referring to. "As for your daughter, I promise you that she shall be more beautiful than anyone you ever saw in your life. Call her Felicia, and when she grows up, give her the ring and the pot of pinks to console her for her poverty. Take them both then, my dear child," he added, "and your brother shall have everything else." The 2 children seemed quite contented, and when their father died they wept for him, and divided his possessions, and as he had told them. Felicia believed that her brother loved her, but when she sat down upon one of the stools, he said angrily, "Keep your pot of pinks and your ring, but let my things alone. I like order in my house." Felicia was very, "Hey, hi Dumda, good morning." We're in the middle of in the beginning of a little story. Felicia, who was very gentle, said nothing, but stood up crying quietly while Bruno, yes, his name is Bruno, for that was her brother's name, sat comfortably by the fire. Presently, when supper time came, Bruno had a delicious egg, and he threw the shell to Felicia, saying, "There, that is all I can give you. If you don't like it, go out and catch frogs. There are plenty of them in the marsh close by. Felicia did not answer, but she cried more bitterly than ever and went away to her own little room. She found it filled with the sweet scent of the pinks, and going up to them she said sadly, "Beautiful pinks, you are so sweet and so pretty. You are the only comfort I have left. Be very sure that I will take care of you and water you well, and never allow any cruel hand to tear you from your stems." Tee-hee, you have found your frogs. Yes, Death Noah was very nice to give out subs. As she leaned over them, she noticed that they were very dry. So taking her pitcher, she ran off in the clear moonlight to the fountain, which was at some distance. When she reached it, she sat down upon the brink to rest, but she had hardly done so when she saw a stately lady coming toward her, surrounded by numbers of attendants. 6 maids of honor carried her train, and she leaned upon the arm of the other. When they came near the fountain, a canopy was spread before her, under which was placed a sofa of cloth of gold, and presently a dainty supper was served, upon a table covered with dishes of gold and crystal, while the wind in the trees and the falling water of the fountain murmured the softest music. Felicia was hidden in the shade, too much astonished by all she saw to venture to move, but in a few moments the queen said, "I fancy I see a shepherdess near the tree. Bid her come hither." So Felicia came forward and saluted the queen timidly, but with so much grace that all were surprised. "What are you doing here, my pretty child?" asked the queen. "Are you not afraid of robbers?" "Ah, madam," said Felicia, "a poor shepherdess who has nothing to lose does not fear robbers." "You are not very rich, then," said the queen, smiling. "I am so poor," said Felicia, "that a pot of pinks and a silver ring are my only possessions in the world." "But you have a heart," said the queen. "What should you say if anybody wanted to steal that?" "I do not know what it is like to lose one's heart, madam," she replied, "but I have always heard that without a heart one cannot live, and if it is broken one must die, and in spite of my property I should be sorry not to live. In spite of my poverty, I think I said property. Anyway, you are quite right to take care of your heart, pretty one," said the queen. "But tell me, have you supped?" "No, madam," answered Felicia. "My brother ate all the supper there was." Then the queen ordered that a place should be made for her at the table, and herself loaded Felicia's plate with good things, but she was too much astonished to be hungry. "I want to know what you were doing at the fountain so late," asked the queen presently. "I came to fetch a pitcher of water for my pinks, madam," she answered, stooping up to pick up the pitcher which stood beside her. But when she showed it to the queen, she was amazed to see that it had turned to gold, all sparkling with great diamonds, and the water, of which it was full, was more fragrant than the sweetest roses. She was afraid to take it until the queen said, "It is yours, Felicia. Go and water your pinks with it, and let it remind you of the queen of the woods is your friend." The shepherdess threw herself at the queen's feet and thanked her humbly for her gracious words. "Ah, madam," she cried, "if I beg you to stay here a moment, I would run and fetch my pot of pinks for you. They could not fall into better hands." "Go, Felicia," said the queen, stroking her cheek softly. "I will wait here until you come back." So Felicia took up her pitcher and ran to her little room, but when she had been away, Bruno had gone in and taken the pot of pinks, leaving a great cabbage in its place. What the hell? When she saw the unlucky cabbage, Felicia was very much distressed, and did not know what to do, but at last she ran back to the fountain, and kneeling before the queen said, "Madam, Bruno has stolen my pot of pinks, so I have nothing but my silver ring, but I beg you to accept it as a proof of my gratitude." "But if I take your ring, my pretty shepherdess," said the queen, "you will have nothing left. What will you do then?" "Ah, madam," she answered simply, "I have your friendship, I shall do very well. If I have your friendship, I shall do very well." So the queen took the ring and put it on her finger and mounted her chariot, which was made of coral studded with emeralds, and drawn by 6 milk-white horses. And Felicia looked after her until the winding of the forest path hid her from sight. Then she went back to the cottage, thinking over all the wonderful things that had happened. The first thing she did when she reached her room was to throw the cabbage out of the window. But she was very much surprised to hear an odd little voice cry out, "Oh, I am half killed," and could not tell where it came from, because cabbages do not generally speak. As soon as it was light, Felicia, who was very unhappy about her pot of pinks, went out to look for it, and the first thing she found was the unfortunate cabbage. She gave it a push with her foot, saying, "What are you doing here, and how dare you put yourself in the place of my pot of pinks?" "If I hadn't been carried," replied the cabbage, "you may be very sure that I shouldn't have thought of going there." It made her shiver with fright to hear the cabbage talk, but he went on. "If you will be good enough to plant me by my comrades again, I can tell you where your pinks are at this moment. Hidden in Bruno's bed." Felicia was in despair when she heard this, not knowing how she would get them back, but she replanted the cabbage very kindly in his old place, and as she finished doing it, she saw Bruno's head, and said, catching hold of it, "Come here, horrid little creature. You shall suffer for all the unkind things my brother has done to me." "Ah, shepherdess," said the hen, "don't kill me. I am rather a gossip, and I can tell you some surprising things that you will like to hear. Don't imagine that you are the daughter of the poor laborer who brought you up. Your mother was a queen who had 6 girls already, and the king threatened that unless she had a son who could inherit his kingdom, she should have her head cut off. So when the queen had another little daughter, she was quite frightened, and agreed with her sister, who was a fairy, to exchange her for the fairy's little son. Now the queen had been shut up in a great tower by the king's orders, and when a great many days went by and still she heard nothing from the fairy, she made her escape from the window by means of a rope ladder, taking her little baby with her. After wandering about until she was half dead with cold and fatigue, she reached this cottage. I was the laborer's wife, and was a good nurse, and the queen gave you into my charge, and told me all her misfortunes, and then died before she had time to say what was to become of you. As I never in all my life could keep a secret, I could not help telling this strange tale to my neighbors, and one day a beautiful lady came here, and I told it to her also. When I had finished, she touched me with a wand and she held in her hand, and instantly I became a hen. There was an end of my talking. I was very sad, and my husband, who was out when it happened, never knew what had become of me. After seeking me everywhere, he believed that I must have been drowned or eaten up by wild beasts in the forest. That same lady came here once more, and commanded that you should be called Felicia, and left the ring and the pot of pinks to be given to you. While she was in the house, 25 of the king's guards came to search for you, doubtless meaning to kill you, but she muttered a few words, and immediately they all turned into cabbages. It was one of them whom you threw out of your window yesterday." "Oh, great! Glad to hear that, Dumda. Sorry, I just read that." "I don't know how it was that he could speak. I have never heard either of them say a word before, nor have I been able to do it myself until now." The princess was greatly astonished at the hen's story, and said kindly, "I'm truly sorry for you, my poor nurse, and wish it was in my power to restore you to your real form, but we must not despair it. It seems to me, after what you have told me, that something must be going to happen soon. Just now, however, I must go and look for my pinks, which I love better than anything in the world." All right. Bruno had gone out into the forest, never thinking that Felicia would search in his room for the pinks. She was delighted by his unexpected absence, and thought to get them back without further trouble. But as soon as she entered the room, she saw a terrible army of rats who were guarding the straw bed, When she attempted to approach it, they sprang at her, biting and scratching furiously. Quite terrified, she drew back, crying out, "Oh, my dear Pinks, how can you stay here in such bad company?" Then she suddenly bethought herself of the pitcher of water, and hoping that it might have some magic power, she ran to fetch it, and sprinkled a few drops over the fierce-looking swarm of rats. In a moment not a tail or whisker to be seen. Each one had made for his hole as fast as legs could carry him, so that the princess could safely take her pot of pinks. She found them nearly dying for want of water, and hastily poured all that was left in the pitcher upon them. As she bent over them, enjoying their delicious scent, a soft voice that seemed to rustle among the leaves said, "Lovely Felicia, the day has come at last when I may have the happiness of telling you how even the flowers love you and rejoice in your beauty." The princess, quite overcome by the strangeness of hearing a cabbage, a hen, and a pink speak, and by the terrible sight of an army of rats, suddenly became very pale and faded away. At this moment in came Bruno. Working in the heat had not improved his temper. When he saw that Felicia had succeeded in finding her pinks, he was so angry that he dragged her out into the garden and shut the door upon her. The fresh air soon made her open her pretty eyes, and there before her stood the Queen of the Woods, looking as charming as ever. "You have a bad brother," she said. "I saw he turned you out. Shall I punish him for it?" "Ah, madam, no," she said. "I am not angry with him." "But supposing he was not your brother after all, what would you say then?" asked the Queen. "Oh, but I think he must be," said Felicia. "What?" said the Queen. "Have you not heard that you are a princess?" "I was told so a little while ago, madam, but how could I believe it without a single proof?" "Ah, dear child," said the Queen, "the way you speak assures me that, in spite of your humble upbringing, you are indeed a real princess, and I can save you from being treated in such a way again." She was interrupted at this moment by the arrival of a very handsome young man. He wore a coat of green velvet fastened with emerald clasps, and had a crown of pinks on his head. He knelt upon one knee and kissed the Queen's hand. "Ah," she cried, "my Pink, my dear son, what a happiness to see you restored to your natural shape by Felicia's aid," and she embraced him joyfully. Then turning to Felicia, she said, "Charming princess, I know all the hen told you, but you cannot have heard that the Zephyrs, to whom was entrusted the task of carrying my son to the tower where the Queen, your mother, so anxiously waited for him, left him instead in a garden of flowers while they flew off to tell your mother. Whereupon a fairy with whom I had quarreled changed him into a pink, and I could do nothing to prevent it. You can imagine how angry I was, and how I tried to find some means of undoing the mischief she had done. But there was no help for it. I could only bring Prince Peak to the place where you were being brought up, hoping that when you grew up he might love you, and by your care be restored to his natural form. And you see, everything that has come right, as I hoped it would. Your giving me the silver ring was the sign that the power of the charm was nearly over, and my enemy's last chance was to frighten you with her army of rats, that she did not succeed in doing. So now, my dear Felicia, if you will be married to my son with this silver ring, your future happiness is certain. Do you think him handsome and amiable enough to be willing to marry him?" "Madam," replied Felicia, blushing, "you overwhelm me with your kindness. I know that you are my mother's sister." Wait, does that not mean that her son is her cousin? No, don't be doing that, guys. "I know that you are my mother's sister, and that by your art you turn the soldiers who were sent to kill me into cabbages, and my nurse into a hen, and that you do me only too much honor in proposing that I shall marry your son. How can I explain to you the cause of my hesitation? I feel for the first time in my life how happy it would make me to be beloved. Can you indeed give me the prince's heart? "It is yours already, lovely princess," he cried, taking her hand in his. "But for the horrible enchantment which kept me silent, I should have told you how long ago how dearly I love you." This made the princess very happy, and the queen, who could not bear to see her dressed like a poor shepherdess, touched her with her wand, saying, "I wish you to be attired as befits your rank and beauty." And immediately the princess's cotton dress became a magnificent robe of silver brocade embroidered with carbuncles, and her soft dark hair was encircled by a crown of diamonds, from which floated a clear white veil. With her bright eyes and the charming color in her cheeks, she was altogether such a dazzling sight that the prince could hardly bear it. "How pretty you are, Felicia," he cried. "Don't keep me in suspense, I entreat you. Say you will marry me." "Ah," said the queen, smiling, "I think she will not refuse now." Just then Bruno, who was going back to his work, came out of the cottage, and thought he must be dreaming when he saw Felicia. But she called him very kindly and begged the queen to take pity on him. "What?" she said, "when he was so unkind to you?" "Ah, madam," said the princess, "I am so happy that I should like everybody else to be happy too." Then the queen kissed her and said, "Well, to please you, let me see what I can do for this cross Bruno." And with a wave of her hand she turned the poor little cottage into a splendid palace, full of treasures. Only the 2 stools and the straw bed remained just as they were, to remind him of his former poverty. Then the queen touched Bruno himself and made him gentle and polite and grateful, and he thanked her and the princess 1,000 times. Lastly, the queen restored the hen and the cabbages to their natural forms, and left them all very contented. The prince and princess were married as soon as possible with great splendor, and lived happily ever after. So then nobody was concerned about how she should have belonged to that other kingdom? Did they address that? I don't know. Because those knights that were cabbages were supposed to do something. Did they just leave it be? Oh well. It was normalized. Yeah, it was more normalized mostly because royalty wanted to keep their bloodlines pure, and because there was just smaller groups of people, and so, well, you gotta have somebody, so who's free? Well, it's not your sibling, so why not your cousin? Doesn't mean good at all, no. And the inbreeding did lead to a lot of issues, obviously. So, would not recommend. 0 out of 10. But hey, that was Felicia and the pot of pinks. Thanks, Dead Noah. Yeah, that's the vibe. Yeah. Oh, okay. I should hope I can. What is the next? Oh, that's a pretty good one. All right. Big plus points with that. With the smart, you mean? Well, thank you. I hope I am fairly knowledgeable on this. That's why I've chosen to do these, but also I'll keep learning through all of these. Learning more and more how they tend to get translated and written. And I like pondering, the repetition they prefer in some stories, and the way that they will choose certain words very consistently, whereas not other things. I is fan of smart women. Oh, I is big fan of smart women. That's fun. Good. I am too. Oh my gosh, stop rowing away, little avatar. It's very weird how it does that sometimes. Yes. Okay, what shall I get? Here we are in the chat section since Dimda is here, and he is always the one to do that. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Oh yes. I still have to sort out my ads. They're being very, I'll say it outright, they're being so fucking annoying. I tried to remove them, and it's gonna start in a little over a minute. Yeah, always be chatting. We love it. Go ahead. Would I be unnerved or afraid if what? No, I prefer it. I like it. I like being able to chat with you guys. We were just talking about it, weren't we, Death Noah? They can back me up. Yes, so. I wait on bated breath, but also the ad is starting soon, so I don't know when that will interrupt. So everyone protect your ears. It will not be soft and cozy. I'm so sorry. Ah, having firearms next door and such. So, through the proper channels, it depends on what is the proper channels. In some places, oh, the ad is going. I don't know if you can hear me right now or not. If you can hear me while I'm talking at this moment, drop a little something. Okay, you can. Then I don't know how the ads work. I don't know how that is happening. I'll get somebody else to help me out with that. The firearms in the house next door. If it was, yeah, I get what you mean, but which laws? Because different countries, even different sections in different countries, will have the different laws. And then, even if it's technically according to the law, is it the proper way to go about it? So they could be theoretically following a law, even a good law, but if they are not actually up to that standard, if they have gotten around it by, they do have mental health concerns, but they have evaded properly dealing with that and documenting that, there was a loophole for themselves, that's not going to be good. Okay, so everything really is truly proper, everything's safe, then the other step would be what kind of firearm. Because there's also two different kinds of neighbors. I have absolutely lived next door to someone with legal firearms. But the difference is this a hunter with a rifle? Or heck, even someone in the city with a small pistol versus someone in either case with an automatic and something that could be debated about, whether that's reasonable or not. My personal view is going to be controversial. It's tough. I would be unnerved if my neighbor was unwell, period. But then if they told me that they had not just a firearm, but a type of firearm that is designed to kill as many people as possible in a short amount of time, that would be unnerving to me, because I'd wonder, why do you want that kind of firearm? It's more, if it was any of the other firearm types, like, yeah, you do you. As long as you're responsible, that's cool. And with that, yeah, that's fair. Hi, Fedster, and good Death Noah doing the wave back. Hello. Yes, it's very classic to be scared of what you don't know, but I think there's also today more people hear firearm and think of the scariest versions of things, as opposed to, heck, half of these stories I've read, they were in a time when they had firearms. There's so many different kinds of firearms, and just like a hunter trying to take down big game for their meat, just a way to live, or um, trying to protect themselves from that kind of big game. I've had stories where, the animals that are around them are not well, and you need to have a firearm or need to be well versed in another weapon, and it's a lot harder to use the other weapon than a firearm. It's a lot less time you have to protect yourself, right? Because they're close. You have to go like that. That's so scary. I mean, imagine if you had a kitchen knife against a bear, and that's it. Then it means you have to be right physically in the bear's space, and you are going to get hurt. Like, that's terrifying. Yeah, definitely better to know that it's through good channels, but if you don't know, you're blissfully ignorant, and it's when you find out eventually, then you get the big scare, like, oh. Anyway, it's all very debatable, and, like, honestly, it would be scary no matter who it is next door if they're doing things in a dangerous manner, because you, like I said, you could have a kitchen knife that is the weapon, but if we're being responsible, then it's a bit different. Yeah, in the city of bear, yeah, I get it, but you get what I mean. If somehow that did happen, yeah, and that's where, like, the forest living, the rural areas, it's much more likely for someone to actually be your neighbor with a legal firearm. And so when I say, yeah, of course I've had that, and of course I'm fine with it, then yeah. Yeah, but there is a difference between having a weapon that takes more effort and having a weapon that is absurdly easy to do so much damage, of course. Yeah. This is all very tense subject, though, so we're gonna drop it, and everybody that's like, wow, okay, what did I just walk in on? That's gonna be the end of it. As much as, like, I'm on board to chat about these things, it's a lot. I'll say only one of those kinds of chats at a time. Yes, thank you for the nod. Heavy. Yes. Very. I need to figure out, like, trigger warnings on stories soon, because I worry about once I get into the cryptid stories if I'll need those prepped and how to do that. It's okay. It's just something I want to be respectful of everybody else in the group, of course. So that's what we want to do. To announce the next story title, I forgot to change the titles again. Yeah, boop, boop. We don't have a story on just yet. The next story will be The White Cat. So, curious what that's gonna be. Oh, thank you, Vetster. Yeah. Oh, honestly, light stories can still have so much to ponder. Just because something is for kids or it's not immediately higher tension or, like, scandalous does not mean that it doesn't have big thoughts, big philosophies connected to it. That's another reason I like reading these fairy tales. Taking on the weight of what this story is trying to imply does a lot. Like, how all these stories end, what the sort of moral they're supposed to walk away with, or what's supposed to be so funny or entertaining, is always very interesting. And you can have deep, big things to ponder about that at the end. Yeah, I was so happy. I was so glad. I'm glad that this worked out. I'm glad that you guys joined me. I was like, I'm just gonna do this real quick and sneakily make sure everything's cleaned up for the next thing. Oh, it's just a little one, but yes, just a little hype train. Since I got to affiliate and I had my avatar fixed up, it was great. Yeah. And we now have 5 of my emotes properly sorted out. There's still one more waiting to be approved. So there's one more frog, as I've called them, that's going to drop. Yes, there's the 5. The pouting frog was a holdout until today, but he's here now. Look at the little pout. Oh, little pout. Or was it the crying? Which one was it? I don't remember. But now they're all here, and they're great. Yeah, that's the pout frog. I intentionally spelled them so that you have to say it. Frog. Frog. It's not a frog, it's a frog. But thank you, that they're cute. I just take free ones on Canva for this and then messed them around a little bit. Got them a little funked up, and then made sure that they were clean backgrounds instead of the awkward little white square. Yeah, I had a few options on there, and frog was definitely the best of what I saw. I couldn't personalize any of them very well to be me, and other animals are lovely, but who would you most likely find in Emerald Lake, my home here? You would find frogs. So there we go, frogs. Yeah. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying it, and I'm excited to do more. Okay, Avatar, stop freaking out. You are so weird. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, so usually I start my streams. Not all that many people are there when I first start them. I say, hi, welcome to Emerald Lake, and sometimes I say my name. It is I, Raven. And so yeah. What do I use for tracking? I'm using VTube Studio, and I haven't added anything onto it. I would have added Spout too, but I'm on a Mac, so there's tech issues. Ugh. Yeah, someone said that Vi also has those little freakouts. I've never been on her stream when that's happened, and I could have swore that she had sorted them out. Oh, it's a webcam in the Mac. Yeah. Yes, my computer. It is not a PC or Windows. Oh my gosh, that is a very good way to say that. I will bug her that I learned that through you guys. Okay, then I will ask her. I think what she did is she got something that I can't get because she's recommended a few things, and then I go looking at them and they're like, nope, no Mac, illegal, we refuse. Ugh. Webcam angle might be the problem. I've seen it get nicer when I have things set up a little bit better. So like it seems that it's liking that better. My problem is that my table versus my chair versus my mic versus my webcam, I can't quite get everything in precisely the same spot and then hold that for 3 hours straight. We have steps to improve that, but we are not there quite yet. But I will definitely ask Vi then. She has always been who's set me up with this and who is helping me and teaching me every step of the way. When I finish fully filling out my about section with more stuff, I'll be doing a big thank you to her on there too. Put a used iPhone 11 on my throne? Why should I do that? Are you saying I should use the iPhone for my webcam? I feel like that's a lot to do for a webcam. She is really great. And yeah, now that I'm affiliate, I was looking into starting to set up the setting up the throne and all of that next. Yeah. My problem, cause like, we were trying to sort out the avatar issues, and we almost did using a phone camera for it anyway, and we went against it because what I'm planning to do, actually, but I haven't quite finished setting it up yet, will be hand cams with origami, because I do lots of origami. And that will be sort of a just chatting stream in origami, and you'll see that. And we'll be counting how many cranes I make, because I'll talk about the Thousand Cranes story and probably read a version or two of that out. Um, and that'll be that section of that. I have a few different ideas for different kinds of streams that I'm going to do. And I know like the little paper sounds can sometimes be nice. Yeah, they're they're so sweet. And whenever I've got little papers, little moments where I just want to like give a little thank you to somebody, or like, what am I supposed to do with this little sticky note? Well, I know what to do with a sticky note. I do origami. That is all I do. And I've led classes. I've taught some different forest friends, and so I'm quite used to doing chill little origami sessions. So I could even probably lead you guys in learning origami if anybody wanted to follow along. um, and it'll be very fun. Some of my favorite stuff is origami masters that do some really cool things, and the way that they are using origami in like different physics problems, especially aerospace engineering stuff. It's so cool. Oh, yeah. You should have hired me, Fetster. I actually was hired for a wedding once. They knew that I made a bunch of cranes, and they were like, "Hey, can you make some cranes, but like some big cranes?" And I'm like, "I will get big papers, and you will have big cranes." And when I say hired, like it was a friend, so like they didn't pay. I think they gave me a gift card in the end. Yeah, I'll do origami nights. I mean, not right now, but yeah. I will be setting up a Discord eventually too. I'm still getting my things sorted out. Tiny ones? How tiny have you made yours? I I I actually have a personal story about someone else making tiny cranes when I showed my cranes and how tiny I went. And it still breaks my heart. And what's awful, so awful, is that I recently lost that teeny tiny crane just a couple years ago. And like it was very sentimental. But there are other ways that people make cranes, and they are so cool. But the way that I make mine, there is really a limit to how small you can make it without getting specialized little tiny tools. Yeah. Okay. Gum wrappers are fun, yeah. I've made some out of roughly gum wrapper size for sure. Well, it wasn't that I lost it because it was too small to keep track of. um, I lost it because I had things in a place where I was living, and I left because it was an unsafe place to be living, and COVID was happening, and I had to isolate. And when I came back, because I knew I needed to move out of that place, they had moved all of my things around. Yeah, and I lost it because they moved all of my things around, and then it was gone. Really, really not cool. Yeah, thank you. But the good news is that I had friends that made me a couple of replacement ones, and the thing is, it was a crane. The techniques, like I said, there's the technique I make, and then the other kind which that person had made, and my new friend made it in the same way, and so I took that. Oh, thank you. Bonks. I bonked the mic back. um, And so I have a little replacement, and I keep it in my phone case stashed away until I could put it somewhere safer. And what have I got in my phone case right now? I have 4-leaf clovers in my phone case right now, a 4 and a 5-leaf clover, so that's fun. But that is why I would like to do origami. Oh my gosh, stop freaking out. Model, what is wrong with you? I stood up straighter and she brightened right back up. She's like, "Oh, yeah, okay. I won't glitch anymore. I'm a good little girl." I'm watching you. This model is not me. She is my mirror self, and she is evil, I can tell. I saw you move in the corner of my eye. Stop doing that. All right. Well, thank you for this little chat. That was nice. That was a good chat. Would we like to keep chatting, or shall I get on to the white cat? I think since Fetster has a little white and purple tail, it wouldn't be amiss to do a white cat. Oh, yeah, fair. I'm Cat Raven. Thought it would be an interesting mix. I've seen cats and ravens fight each other, like tease each other, and it is so fun. If they were stuck in one body, there would be too much trickster and chaos, and I would love it to death. I would. Yes, you do that, Dimda. You have more tails, cat tails too. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, I knew you would. I was about to ask, and I'm like, you probably already are. Look at all of those. Oh my gosh. Okay, second and fourth from the end are probably our white cat, but we'll see. We have to find out if it's a fluffier cat or not. They'll describe it. They're most of them from one channel? Wow. And I think I love the first one you put out first most, because like, little Pokemon fan in me, I was always obsessed with pretty little Ninetales. Wow, look at all of that is one. Okay, I may need to bug. Scratch Fury couldn't be outdone. Had to have the prettiest tail. I may have to look into that. What did they list who made their tails? Who made those? 'Cause like I said, I'm looking into emotes and making them and such, and I think tails would be fun, but I'd want to have all kinds of tails, not cat, fox specific. The double tails and the 7 or 8 tails are fun. Gotta get all kinds of tails in there. Which channel was it? If they don't say what it was, it's still fine, but free from somewhere. That's perfect. Because if you can get a free version of something, then you can change it, you know? And that's what I did with the frogs. I'm good at that. Give me a base and I will fiddle with it and make it my own. Okay, next time you can ask. That would be great. Also, Death Noah, your tail, and I don't mean this unkindly, it reminds me of an elderly kitty. And that's so sweet. I'm just like, look at all those energetic kitties, and they're all here. And then yours is like, oh, I'm an old little lady. I'll just saunter up, purring like a motorboat, probably. I can just feel the old cat vibes from that. Okay. Tail chat concluded. Next story. And I'll try and sit and everything right so that my model stops freaking the frick out. What I'm probably gonna put first on the throne wish list is like mic and mic stand. Honestly, like one of those arms that move around so that I can get it to stand up, so that it's at the right height for everything. So I don't. Yeah, that'd be best probably. Those are the first things I'll do. Okay. That'd be awesome. Yes, Fetster, please do. Please do. Alright, okay. The white cat. Elgato wave. Already you got it out. Elgato wave. And mic arm all noted. As I've been doing these stories, I always write down which stories in order so that when I put the videos up on YouTube, I can list which ones we did, and also so I don't double the stories and read them again, or, more important, so I know when there's a concerning thing in a story, and I know to never do that one without a trigger warning again, or like prepared to swap words like I've done for a couple of stories. But I'm also like taking notes on the papers too. I like that now I've got like a little diary of all of my streams with you guys so I can remember them. It's cute. Alright. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 3 sons who were all so clever and brave that he began to be afraid that they would want to reign over the kingdom before he was dead. If you want to be low, like it sits lower, or I'll write it down anyway. I'll look at them both. Okay, road PSA 1. Cool. All right. Anyway, okay. So king is like, these boys are going to kill me so that they can reign. Oh no. Now the king, though he felt that he was growing old, did not at all wish to give up the government as his kingdom while he could still manage it very well. So he thought the best way to live in peace would be to divert the minds of his sons by promises which he could always get out of when the time came for keeping them. So he sent for them all, and after speaking to each of them kindly, he added, "You will quite agree with me, my dear children, that my great age makes it impossible for me to look after my affairs of state as carefully as I once did. I begin to fear that this may affect the welfare of my subjects. Therefore, I wish that one of you should succeed to my crown. But in return for such a gift as this, it is only right that you should do something for me. Now, as I think of retiring into the country, it seems to me that a pretty, lively, faithful little dog would be very good company for me. So, without any regard for your ages, I promise that the one who brings me the most beautiful little dog shall succeed me at once." I'm going to stop right here because it says white cat. I'm expecting there to be a little crusty dog in this, a little crusty white dog. The meme of the little crusty white dog. If there's anybody that likes Smosh, I know it's very against ASMR because it's all very loud, and this is all, not loud. But I'm just seeing that character right now. Anyway, okay. The 3 princes. Oh, good little dog pets. That's good. Where do you get all these animals? They're so cute. I have to bug that person for sure. The princes were greatly surprised by their father's sudden fancy for a little dog, but as it gave the 2 younger ones a chance they would not otherwise have had of being king, and as the eldest was too polite to make any objection, oh, that's perfect, they accepted the commission with pleasure. They bade farewell to the king, who gave them presents of silver and precious stones, and appointed to meet them at the same hour in the same place after a year had passed, to see the little dogs they had brought for him. A year to find a dog? Oh, come on, guys, we can do better. Aw, cute little fuzzball there. Then they went together to a castle which was about a league from the city, accompanied by all their particular friends, to whom they gave a grand banquet, and the 3 brothers promised to be friends always, to share whatever good fortune befell them, and not to be parted by any envy or jealousy. So they set out, agreeing to meet at the same castle at the appointed time, to present themselves before the king together. Each one took a different road, and the 2 eldest met with many adventures. But it is about the youngest who you are going to hear. He was young and gay and handsome, and knew everything that a prince ought to know, and as for his courage, there was simply no end to it. And I just realized I forgot to do the title. Da da da. Fixing this because it bugs me. The white cat. Okay, cat. There you go. Fixed it. Also, something about pondering these lighter stories. I love considering and like doing the moments where they're all the change of the word, the change of the meaning of the word gay. I know they don't mean it, but I love to think of them as like, and everybody's so happy that they're all gay. It's queer and we love it. Like, I love that very much. Okay. There was simply no end to his courage. Hardly a day passed without his buying several dogs, big and little, greyhounds, mastiffs, spaniels, and lapdogs. As soon as he had bought a pretty one, he was sure to see a still prettier, and then he had to get rid of all the others and buy that one, as yay! Little queer bat. That little bat's adorable. Okay. Had to get rid of all the others and buy that one, as being alone he found it impossible to take 30 or 40,000 dogs about with him. I mean, what I'm hearing is you are weak and you do not know how to have too many animals. Come on, you can do it. He journeyed from day to day, not knowing where he was going, until at last, just at nightfall, he reached a great gloomy forest. He did not know his way, and to make matters worse, it began to thunder, and the rain poured down. He took the first path he could find, and after walking for a long time, he fancied he saw a faint light, and began to hope that he was coming to some cottage where he might find shelter for the night. At length, guided by the light, he reached the door of the most splendid castle he could have imagined. This door was of gold covered with carbuncles, and it was the pure red light which shone from them that had shown him the way through the forest. The walls were of the finest porcelain in all the most delicate colors. Finest porcelain in all the most delicate colors, and the prince saw that all the stories he had ever read were pictured upon them. But as he went terribly wet, and the rain still fell in torrents, he could not stay to look about any more, but came back to the golden door. There he saw a deer's foot hanging by a chain of diamonds, and he began to wonder who could live in this magnificent castle. So far, I'm just thinking of all the weirdest stories that we read pictured on the doors, like the Goose Girl and the Red Shoes, which were so odd. And I wonder if those were stories that the people then supposedly would have held close and would have put in the pictures like that. Okay. They must feel very secure against robbers, he said to himself. What is to hinder anyone from cutting off that chain and digging out those carbuncles and making himself rich for life? He pulled the deer's foot, and immediately a silver bell sounded and the door flew open. But the prince could see nothing but numbers of hands in the air, each holding a torch. He was so much surprised that he stood quite still until he felt himself pushed forward by other hands, so that, though he was somewhat uneasy, he could not help going on. With his hand on his sword, he prepared for whatever might happen. He entered a hall paved with lapis lazuli, while two lovely voices sang. The hands you see floating above will swiftly your bidding obey. If your heart dreads not conquering love, in this place you may fearlessly stay. The prince could not believe that any danger threatened him when he was welcomed in this way. So, guided by the mysterious hands, he went toward a door of coral, which opened of its own accord. And he found himself in a vast hall of mother of pearl, out of which opened a number of other rooms, glittering with thousands of lights, and full of such beautiful pictures and precious things that the prince felt quite bewildered. After passing through 60 rooms, the hands that conducted him stopped, and the prince saw a most comfortable-looking armchair drawn up close to the chimney corner. At the same moment, the fire lighted itself, and the pretty, soft, clever hands took off the prince's wet, muddy clothes and presented him with fresh ones made of the finest, richest stuffs, all embroidered with gold and emeralds. He could not help admiring everything he saw, and the deft way in which the hands waited on him, though they sometimes appeared so suddenly that they made him jump. Alrighty, Dimda. We're not quite halfway, so I hope you're right. When he was quite ready, and I can assure you that he looked very different from the wet and weary prince who had stood outside in the rain and pulled the deer's foot, the hands led him to a splendid room, upon the walls of which were painted the histories of Puss in Boots. That's one of the ones. And a number of other famous cats. Ooh, okay. Who's the other famous cats? We haven't read any other cat stories. It's just this one and that one. Okay. The table was laid for supper with 2 golden plates and golden spoons and forks, and the sideboard was covered with dishes and glasses of crystal set with precious stones. The prince was wondering whom the second place could be for, when suddenly in came about a dozen cats carrying guitars and rolls of music, who took their places at one end of the room, and under the direction of a cat who beat time with a roll of paper, began to mew in every imaginable key, and to draw their claws across the strings of the guitars, making the strangest kind of music that could be heard. The prince hastily stopped up his ears, but even then the sight of these comical musicians set him into fits of laughter. They're kidding me, and I can't even see them, actually. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine just literally every kind of meowing? It's not harmonies, it's literally all the sounds possible, as well as claws on metal or... maybe not metal strings then. Claws on guitar strings. Oh my gosh. That is a great meme for this moment. Thank you. Closest I have offered is this. The frog will laugh. The frog will laugh. Okay. What funny thing shall I see next? He said to himself, and instantly the door opened, and in came a tiny figure covered by a long black veil. It was conducted by 2 cats wearing black mantles and carrying swords, and a large party of cats followed, who brought in cages full of rats and mice. Oh my gosh. Where did you get that goose? I need that goose. Okay, I was thinking of doing the Untitled Goose Game Goose memes, because I will do those next for emotes if I can. Anyway, I love that they are really just Puss in Boots, except 500 more. Icy Cares, okay. Oh, that's a cute little oh my gosh, Fetster, the goose there for that cute little guy. Oh my gosh. I don't think I'll be that good. We'll see what I can pull off. I don't know. Okay. Bringing in lots of rats and mice. Oh no, I'll see the next goose. I'm sure it'll be great. The prince was so much astonished that he thought he must be dreaming. Aww, that's cute. I think it's very small. Death Noah. Honestly, you're just gonna make me cry. I used to have a little black cat, and all of these make me miss him. There's all the rest of the goose boys. Oh, a little romantic goose boy. Lovely. Okay. We're talking about cats. White cats. Okay, hold on. The prince was so much astonished that he thought he must be dreaming, but the little figure came up to him and threw back its veil, and he saw that it was the loveliest little white cat it is possible to imagine. She looked very young and very sad, oh no, and in a sweet little voice that went straight to his heart, she said to the prince, "King's son, you are welcome. The Queen of Cats is glad to see you." "Lady Cat," replied the prince, "I thank you for receiving me so kindly, but surely you are no ordinary pussycat. Indeed, the way you speak and the magnificence of your castle prove it plainly." "King's son," said the white cat, "I beg you to spare me these compliments, for I am not used to them. But now," she added, "let supper be served, and let the musicians be silent." Yes, please, God. Anyway, as the prince does not understand what they are saying. No, he would not. I want to see the cacophony of those cats so bad. Okay. So the mysterious hands began to bring in the supper, and the first they put on the table 2 dishes, one containing stewed pigeons, and the other a fricassee of fat mice. The sight of the latter made the prince feel as if he could not enjoy his supper at all. Well, yeah, but the white cat, seeing this, assured him that the dishes intended for him were prepared in a separate kitchen. Ah, very good. Okay, thank you. And he might be quite certain that they contained neither rats nor mice. Oh, even better. And the prince felt so sure that she would not deceive him that he had no more hesitation in the beginning. Presently he noticed that on the little paw that was next to him, the white cat wore a bracelet containing a portrait, and he begged to be allowed to look at it. To his great surprise, he found it represented an extremely handsome young man, who was so like himself that it might have been his own portrait. Da, da, da. Is this a clairvoyant cat? The white cat sighed as he looked at it, and seemed sadder than ever, and the prince dared not ask any questions for fear of displeasing her. So he began to talk about other things, and found that she was interested in all the subjects he cared for himself, and seemed to know quite well what was going on in the world. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. I have a very random thought of what might be happening, and I think that maybe it's not his own portrait, but his father's portrait. And this little white cat, because obviously he's going to bring the cat to the king. He's gotta, because he's asking for a little dog. But this cat wants to see the dad. Maybe they used to know each other. Like that was an old pet. I don't know. Okay. Where was I? Did not ask any. Began to ask her of other things, and found that she was interested in all subjects he cared for himself, and seemed to know quite well what was going on in the world. After supper they went into another room, which was fitted up as a theater, and the cats acted and danced for their amusement, and then the white cat said good night to him, and the hands conducted him into a room he had not seen before, hung with tapestry worked with butterflies' wings of every color. There were mirrors that reached from the ceiling to the floor, and a little white bed with curtains of gauze tied up with ribbons. The prince went to bed in silence, as he did not know how to begin a conversation with the hands that waited on him. And in the morning he was awakened by a noise and confusion outside of his window, and the hands came and quickly dressed him in hunting costume. When he looked out, all the cats were assembled in the courtyard, some leading greyhounds, some blowing horns, for the white cat was going out hunting. The hands led a wooden horse up to the prince and seemed to expect him to mount it, at which he was very indignant, but it was no use for him to object, for he speedily found himself upon its back, and pranced gaily off with him. The white cat herself was riding a monkey, which climbed even up to the eagles' nests, when she had a fancy for the young eaglets. Never has there a pleasanter hunting party, and when they returned to the castle, the prince and the white cat supped together as before. But when they had finished, she offered him a crystal goblet, which must have contained a magic draught, for as soon as he had swallowed its content, he forgot everything, even the little cat he was seeking for, or the little dog, he was seeking for the king, and only thought how happy he was to be with the white cat. And so the days passed in every kind of amusement until the year was nearly gone. Wow. To be looking for a dog for a year is just absurd in the first place, but that it really took that long is, wow, okay. The prince had forgotten all about meeting his brothers. He did not even know what country he belonged to, but the white cat knew when he ought to go back, and one day she said to him, "Do you know that you have only 3 days left to look for the little dog for your father, and your brothers have found lovely ones?" Then the prince suddenly recovered his memory and cried, "What can have made me forget such an important thing? My whole future depends on it, and even if I could in such a short time find a dog pretty enough to gain me a kingdom, where should I find a horse who would carry me all that way in 3 days?" And he began to be very vexed. But the white cat said to him, "King's son, do not trouble yourself. I am your friend, and I will make everything easy for you. You can stay here for a day, as the good wooden horse can take you to your country in 12 hours. "Thank you, beautiful cat," said the prince, "but what good will it do me to get back if I have not a dog to take to my father?" "See here," answered the white cat, holding up an acorn. "There is a prettier one in this than in the dog star." "Oh, white cat dear," said the prince, "how unkind you are to laugh at me now." "Only listen," she said, holding the acorn to his ear, and inside it he distinctly heard a tiny voice say, "Bow wow." The prince was delighted, for a dog that can be shut up in an acorn must be very small indeed. He wanted to take a look at it, but the white cat said it would be better not to open the acorn till he was before the king, in case the tiny dog should be cold on the journey. Oh, interesting. He thanked her 1,000 times and said goodbye quite sadly when the time came for him to set out. Cute little laughing cats. "The days have passed so quickly with you," he said. "I only wish I could take you with me now." But the white cat shook her head and sighed deeply in answer. See, I'm sure this is it. After all, the prince was the first to arrive at the castle, where he agreed to meet his brothers. But they came soon after, and stared in amazement when they saw the wooden horse in the courtyard, jumping like a hunter. The prince met them joyfully, and they began to tell them all their adventures. But he managed to hide from them what he had been doing, and even led them to think that a turnspit dog, which he had with him, was the one he was bringing for the king. Fond as they all were of one another, the 2 eldest sons could not help being glad to think that their dogs certainly had a better chance. The next morning they started in the same chariot. The elder brothers carried in baskets 2 such tiny, fragile dogs that they hardly dared to touch them. Yep, these are crusty little white dogs, you just know it. As for the turnspit, he ran after the chariot and got so covered with mud that one could hardly see what he was like at all. When they reached the palace, everyone crowded round to welcome them as they went into the king's great hall. And when the 2 brothers presented their little dogs, nobody could decide which was the prettier. They were already arranging between themselves to share the kingdom equally, when the youngest stepped forward, drawing from his pocket the acorn the white cat had given him. He opened it quickly, and there, upon a white cushion, they saw a dog so small that it could easily have been put through a ring. How are you supposed to enjoy that? The prince laid it upon the ground, and it got up at once and began to dance. How could you see it if it's so tiny? Anyway, the king did not know what to say, for it was impossible that anything could be prettier than this little creature. Nevertheless, he was in no hurry to part with his crown. He told his sons that, as they had been so successful the first time, he would ask them to go once again, and seek by land and sea for a piece of muslin so fine that it could be drawn through the eye of a needle. The brothers were not very willing to set out again, But the two eldest consented because it gave them another chance, and they started as before. He must do. That little dog is so tiny, it must have to. The youngest again mounted the wooden horse and rode back at full speed to his beloved white cat. Every door of the castle stood wide open, and every window and turret was illuminated, so that it looked more wonderful than before. The hands hastened to meet him, and led the wooden horse off to the stable, while he hurried in to find the white cat. She was asleep in a little basket in a white satin cushion, but she very soon started up when she heard the prince, and was overjoyed at seeing him once more. "How could I hope that you would come back to me, king's son?" she said, and then he stroked her and petted her and told her of his successful journey and how he had come back to ask for her help, as he believed that it was impossible to find what the king demanded. The white cat looked serious and said she must think of what was to be done, but that luckily there were some cats in the castle who could spin very well, and if anybody could manage it, they could, and she would set them to the task herself. And then the hands appeared carrying torches and conducted the prince and the white cat to a long gallery which overlooked the river, from the windows of which they saw a magnificent display of fireworks of all sorts, after which they had supper, which the prince liked even better than the fireworks, for it was very late and he was hungry after his long ride. And so the days passed quickly as before. It was impossible to feel dull with the white cat. She had quite a talent for inventing new amusements. Indeed, she was cleverer than any cat has any right to be. But when the prince asked her how it was that she was so wise, she only said, "King's son, do not ask me. Guess what you please. I may not tell you anything." Ooh, interesting. Yes, they are very talented cats. You taking notes? You trying to train your cats? Oh my gosh. Training cats is such a time. They will always... Oh my gosh. I don't need to go off on a tangent. Okay. The prince was so happy that he did not trouble himself at all about the time. But presently the white cat told him that the year was gone, and that he needed not to be anxious about the piece of muslin, as they had made it very well. This time, she added, "I can give you a suitable escort." And on looking out into the courtyard, the prince saw a superb chariot of burnished gold, enameled in flame color with 1,000 different devices. It was drawn by 12 snow-white horses, harnessed 4 abreast. Their trappings were flame-colored velvet, embroidered with diamonds. 100 chariots followed, each drawn by 8 horses, and filled with officers in splendid uniforms, and 1,000 guards surrounded the procession. "Go," said the white cat, "and when you appear before the king in such state, he surely will not refuse you the crown which you deserve. Take this walnut, but do not open it until you are before him. Then you will find in it the piece of stuff you asked me for." Yeah. Training cats is a lot more to do something than to not do something, because they be pretty insistent. They do what they want, that's for sure. I'm just remembering that Doomda said that you'd have to head out soon enough, and I thought I would tell you I will make sure that I upload this stream tonight, so you'll be able to find it probably by the time you get back, and be able to finish this story if that bugs you. It would bug me because I'd want to know how it ended. So if you're still here, Dimda, that's how you can find the closure for this story. It'll be up. Okay. Because we are still a good ways away from finishing this story. "Lovely Blanchette," said the prince, so I guess that's her name, Blanchette. Blanche. How can I thank you properly for all your kindness to me? Only tell me that you wish it, and I will give up forever all thought of being king, and will stay here with you always." king's son, she replied. It shows the goodness of your heart that you should care so much for a little white cat who is good for nothing but to catch mice. But you must not stay. Excuse me? You are a queen of cats. You do magic with a teeny tiny dog and an acorn and a muslin and a walnut. You have plenty of things you are good for, cat. Oh my gosh. So the prince kissed her little paw and set out. You can imagine how fast he traveled when I tell you that they reached the king's palace in just half the time it had taken the wooden horse to get there. This time the prince was so late that he did not try to meet his brothers at their castle, so they thought he could not be coming, and were rather glad of it, and displayed their pieces of muslin to the king proudly, feeling sure of success. And indeed the stuff was very fine, and would go through the eye of a very large needle. But the king was only too glad to make a difficulty, sent for a particular needle, which was kept among the crown jewels, and had such a small eye that everybody saw it at once, that it was impossible that the muslin would pass through it. The princes were angry, and were beginning to complain that it was a trick, when suddenly the trumpet sounded, and the youngest prince came in. His father and brothers were quite astonished at his magnificence, and after he had greeted them, he took the walnut from his pocket and opened it, fully expecting to find the piece of muslin, but instead there was only a hazelnut. He cracked it, and there lay a cherry stone. Everybody was looking on, and the king was chuckling to himself at the idea of finding the piece of muslin in a nutshell. Oh no, Violet, no, so many. Oh, scary, there's gonna be so many. Okay, everybody look for that cheese. Give them cheese, quickly. They demand cheese. Find cheese for them. There you go, we give you cheese. Hello, Raiders. We are in the middle, and this time I actually mean middle. We are in the middle of a story called The White Cat. So, alright, rats, beware. We're reading a story where we talked about eating rats. But, hello. Hello from us frogs. I have given you the cheese I have. That is the best I can do. Hellos. I will wait till I have all of these little hellos come in, and then I'll pick up with where we were. And I'll give a quick summary because of all of you raiders in. Look at every you. Don't scatter. Although I do like the little scatter to shout. We won't eat you. We're not cats. We're just reading about the cats. Okay. Now that things have kind of settled, people are mostly settling in. Hellos. This is the fairy tale called The White Cat. Basically, there's a king who has 3 sons. They all want to be king. The king is like, I'm going to make it hard for them to figure out who's going to be the next king. I'm going to send them to find a little dog. And so they all go off to find dogs. And the youngest son goes off and finds himself at a castle of cats. And there's this white cat who is the queen cat, and she is very nice. She has a little oddness where she has a bracelet with a portrait in the bracelet that looks very much like our prince, the youngest son, but she refuses to talk about it, and it's a little bit weird. And he's asked, like, won't you come back with me? And she's like, don't do that. I can't answer you any of that, so stop. And he took a little white dog, or a little dog, we assume white as well, because crusty little white dogs. He took an acorn that had the little tiny dog in it to his father, and then the father said, when he saw that dog and the other brother's dogs, okay, now bring me a muslin that can fit through the eye of a needle. So he went back to the cat, and she had her other cats make that muslin, and he brought it back, and she had put it in a walnut, or she said, wait till you open the hazelnut, not walnut. And here he is at the king's court trying to do that, and he's cracked it open and he hasn't found it. It's just the nut, and he cracked the nut and it's a cherry stone, and everybody's like, what the heck's going on? And that's where we're picking up. I will warn you, my ad thing says that it's going to start soon, and I don't know how to stop it. So if this is annoying, I'm sorry. And if it cuts out and you can't hear me anymore, tell me in the chat and I will back up to where I was. Okay. However, then the prince cracked open the cherry stone, but everyone laughed when he saw it contained only its own kernel. He opened that and found a grain of wheat. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was telling them that you would help me, because you helped me with all of this stuff. He found in that a grain of wheat, and in that was a millet seed. Then he himself began to wonder and muttered softly, White cat, are you making fun of me? In an instant he felt a cat's claw give his hand quite a sharp scratch, and hoping that it was meant as an encouragement, he opened the millet seed. Oh yes, I will do that too. And drew out a piece of muslin 400 ells long, which I recently figured out how long an L is. It's the length of your elbow to your hand. I think the end of your hand, but maybe the palm of your hand. So it's at least a foot. L's long. Where was I? It's a very long thing. Woven with the loveliest colors and most beautiful patterns, and when the needle was brought, it went through the eye 6 times with greatest ease. The king turned pale, and the other princes stood silent and sorrowful, for nobody could deny that this was the most marvelous piece of muslin that was to be found in the world. Yeah, the ad is currently going, but hopefully you can hear me. Presently the king turned to his sons and said, with a deep sigh, Nothing could console me in my old age. Nothing could I'm doing that right now, and that so far has been working. So, because you had said that that's what I should do when I mentioned lagging and my back hurting, so looks like we got that. Yeah. Aha, okay. Yeah, it's better now. It still did it a few times, but it's better now. So, confirmed. We did it. And I thought it was so funny that Fetster was saying that you called it face planting. That really is what it did. Half the time it just smacks up against the camera. Well, you were not here very long before other things. See, I did it on purpose there. There's a little bit of a lag. The image takes a minute. It is. She just passes out. Little narcoleptic friend. Okay. Story. The king turned pale and the other princes stood silent. Nobody could deny that this was the most marvelous piece of muslin that was to be found in the world. Presently the king turns to his sons and said with a deep sigh, Nothing could console me more in my old age than to realize your willingness to gratify my wishes. Go then once more, and whoever at the end of a year can bring back the loveliest princess shall be married to her, and shall without further delay receive the crown, for my successor must certainly be married. Okay, I had made my prediction earlier. What's with the bracelet, and very clearly this white cat is clairvoyant. But yeah, it's got to be the cat. So I knew she was going to come back to the castle. I mean, she has to. But I thought that the king would know her. You knew that? Okay. Points to Fetster, not to me then. I get half point. Alright, here we go. The prince considered that he had earned the kingdom fairly twice over, but still he was too well bred to argue about it. Well, there's 3 sons, there's got to be 3 tests. So he just went back to his gorgeous chariot and, surrounded by his escort, returned to the White Cat faster than he had come. This time she was expecting him. The path was strewn with flowers, and 1,000 braziers were burning scented woods which perfumed the air. Seated in a gallery from which she could see his arrival, the White Cat waited for him. "Well, king's son," she said, "here you are once more without a crown." "Madam," said he, "thanks to your generosity, I have earned one twice over, but the fact is my father is so loath to part with it that it would be no pleasure to me to take it." "Never mind," she answered. "It's just as well to try and deserve it." "Oh no, what's this?" Yay! Follower goal! I have to update that again. Thank you, friends. I appreciate. Thank you very much. Okay. Just as well as you must take back a lovely princess with you next time, I will be on the lookout for you. I'll look out for one for you. In the meantime, let us enjoy ourselves tonight. I have ordered a battle between my cats and the river rats. Oh my gosh, that's you guys. You're gonna fight the cats? I'm gonna guess that you'll lose based on the story plot. Like, usually the structure would say don't, but thank you, Dimda. Yes, give the hypes. That is fun. My cats and the river rats, on purpose to amuse you, they're gonna fight. So this year slipped away even more pleasantly than the preceding ones. Yeah, Fetster. Death Noah, that's perfect. Everybody drop either a cat or a rat. Choose your sides. So the year passed away even more pleasantly than the preceding ones. Sometimes the prince could not help asking the White Cat how it was she could talk. You chose cat. You chose frog and rat. You're setting traps for the cats. Good, good. Of course, Fetster chose very violent rats, and I'm here for it. Perhaps you are a fairy, he said, or some enchanter changed you into a cat. But she only gave him answers that told him nothing. Oh yes, alright, bye-bye Dimda. I'll upload these on YouTube for sure tonight so that if you need to hear the end of this story, you can find it. I made that promise. You will find it. Go have a good day. Make lots of fun stuff. She told him answers that told him nothing. Days go by so quickly when one is very happy that it is certain the prince would never have thought of its being time to go back, when one evening as they sat together, the White Cat said to him that if he wanted to take a lovely princess home with him the next day, he must be prepared to do what she told him. No problem, bud. Take this sword, she said, and cut my head off. Cried the prince, I cut off your head? Blanchette, darling, how could I do it? Oh yeah, the cat's name is Blanchette. Sort of very suddenly they dropped that in before. I entreat you to do as I tell you, king's son, she replied. The tears came to the prince's eyes as he begged her to ask him anything but that, to set him any task she pleased as proof of his devotion, but to spare him the grief of killing his dear pussy. He can't kill his dear pussy. Come on. They did say pussycat earlier, but now they just said it. And buddies, they capitalized it. It's pussy with capital P. I'm very happy with this. But nothing could say
Nothing he could say altered her determination, and at last he drew his sword. Thank you, Scratch Fairy. Yes, it's all eyebrows right now. At last he drew his sword, and desperately, with a trembling hand, cut off the little white head. But imagine his astonishment and delight when suddenly a lovely princess stood before him, and while he was still speechless with amazement, the door opened, and a goodly company of knights and ladies entered, each carrying a cat's skin. They hastened with every sign of joy to the princess, kissing her hand and congratulating her on being once more restored to her natural shape. She received them graciously, but after a few minutes begged that they would leave her alone with the prince. Well, okay. To whom she said, "You see, prince, that you were right in supposing me to be no ordinary cat." Yes, more eyebrows, this time with a white-haired cat or animal-y person. Yeah, befitting. My father reigned over 6 kingdoms. The queen, my mother, whom he loved dearly, had a passion for traveling and exploring, and when I was only a few weeks old, she obtained his permission to visit a certain mountain of which she had heard many marvelous tales, and set out, taking with her a number of attendants. Exactly that. On the way, they had to pass near an old castle belonging to the fairies. Nobody had ever been into it, but it was reported to be full of the most wonderful things. And my mother remembered to have heard that the fairies had in their garden such fruits as were to be seen and tasted nowhere else. She began to wish to try them for herself, and turned her steps in the direction of the garden. On arriving at the door, which blazed with gold and jewels, she ordered her servants for herself, and turned her steps in the direction of the ordered her servants to knock loudly. But it was useless. It seemed as if all the inhabitants of the castle must be asleep or dead. Now the more difficult it became to obtain the fruit, the more the queen was determined that have it she would. So she ordered that they should bring ladders and get over the wall into the garden. But though the wall did not look very high, they had tied the ladders together to make them very long. It was quite impossible to get to the top. The queen was in despair, but as night was coming on, she ordered that they should encamp just where they were, and went to bed herself, feeling quite ill. She was so disappointed. In the middle of the night, she was suddenly awakened and saw to her surprise a tiny, ugly old woman seated beside her, who said to her, "I must say that we consider it quite troublesome of your majesty to insist upon tasting our fruit, but to save you annoyance, my sisters and I will consent to give you as much as you can carry away, on one condition. That is, you shall bring us your little daughter to bring up as our own." "Ah, my dear madam," cried the queen, "is there nothing else that you will take for the fruit? I will give you my kingdoms willingly." "No," replied the old fairy, "we will have nothing but your little daughter. She shall be as happy as the day is long, and we will give her everything that is worth having in fairyland, but you must not see her again until she is married." "Though it is a hard condition," said the queen, "I consent, for I shall certainly die if I do not taste the fruit, and so I should lose my little daughter either way." Honestly, yeah, but so many of these people, do this in these fairy tales, and I will remind y'all, birth control wasn't really a thing then, so people did have babies when they didn't mean to, you know? Dark. Okay. So the old fairy led her into the castle, and though it was still the middle of the night, the queen could see plainly that it was far more beautiful than she had been told, "which you can easily believe, prince," said the white cat, "when I tell you that it was this castle that we are now in." "Will you gather my fruit yourself, queen?" said the old fairy, "or shall it come to you? Shall I call it to come to you?" "I beg you to let me see it come when it is called," cried the queen. "That will be something quite new."
The old fairy whistled thrice when she cried, "Apricots, peaches, nectarines, cherries, plums, pears, melons, grapes, apples, oranges, lemons, gooseberries, strawberries, raspberries, come!" And in an instant they came tumbling in, one over another, and yet they were neither dusty nor spoilt, and the queen found them quite as good as she had fancied them. You see, they grew upon fairy trees. Ooh, that could go good or bad. The old fairy gave her golden baskets in which to take the fruit away, and it was as much as 400 mules could carry. I'm allowing this comment because I said all the raspberries come. It was all those fruits and also come. The fairy trees had fruit and fruit. Anyway. Okay. Because of the way that our thatch roof cottage called out this comment, I will say what we are comparing the fruits and kids slash the about to be kid elements quite directly. Fruits from a person and fruits from a tree. Anyway, okay. Many mules were carrying them. She reminded the queen of her agreement and led her back to the camp. Exactly. And next morning she went back into her kingdom. But before she had gone very far, she began to repent of her bargain. Well, yeah, you gave up a child. And when the king came out to meet her, she looked so sad that he guessed that something had happened and asked what was the matter. At first the queen was afraid to tell him, but when as soon as they reached the palace, 5 frightful little dwarfs were sent by the fairies to fetch me, because remember this is the little white cat saying this, she was obliged to confess what she had promised. The king was very angry and had the queen and myself shut up in a great tower and safely guarded, and drove the little dwarfs out of his kingdom. But the fairies sent a great dragon who ate up all the people he met, and whose breath burnt up everything as he passed through the country. And at last, after trying in vain to rid himself of this monster, the king, to save his subjects, was obliged to consent that I should be given up to the fairies. This time they came themselves to fetch me in a chariot of pearl drawn by seahorses, followed by the dragon, who is led with chains of diamonds. Fairy tales go wild for sure. My cradle was placed between the old fairies, who loaded me with caresses, and away we whirled through the air to a tower which they had built on purpose for me. There I grew up surrounded with everything that was beautiful and rare, and learning everything that is ever taught to a princess, but without any companions but a parrot and a little dog, who could both talk, and receiving every day a visit from one of the old fairies, who came mounted upon the dragon. Really, though, so many. I mean, I guess there'd be a lot of orphans. There'd be a lot of people that die in various disappointing reasons, right? And then children that still have to be raised. But yeah, anyway. The dragon. Oh no, where was I? This is a big, thick paragraph that I have to find this in. I'm going to get lost. One day, however, as I sat at my window, I saw a handsome young prince who seemed to have been hunting in the forest which surrounded my prison. Aha, that must be the bracelet, and who was standing and looking up at me. When he saw that I observed him, he saluted me with great deference. You can imagine that I was delighted to have someone new to talk to, and in spite of the height of my window, our conversation was prolonged till night fell. Then my prince reluctantly bade me farewell, but after that he came again many times, and at last I consented to marry him. But the question was, how was I to escape from my tower? The fairies always supplied me with flax for my spinning, and by great diligence I made enough cord for a ladder that would reach to the foot of my tower. But alas, just as my prince was helping me to descend it, the crossest and ugliest of the old fairies flew in. Before he had time to defend himself, my unhappy lover was swallowed up by the dragon. As for me, the fairies, furious at having their plans defeated, for they had intended me to marry the king of the dwarfs, and I utterly refused, changed me into a white cat. Wow, yeah. When they brought me here, I found all the lords and ladies of my father's court awaiting me under the same enchantment, while the people of lesser rank had been made invisible, all but their hands. There's the hand explanation. As they laid me under the enchantment, the fairies told me all my history, for until then I had quite believed that I was their child, and warned me that my only chance of regaining my natural form was to win the love of a prince who resembled in every way my unfortunate lover. And you have won it, lovely princess, interrupted the prince. You are indeed wonderfully like him, resumed the princess, in voice, in features, and everything, and if you really love me, all my troubles will be at an end. And mine too, cried the prince, throwing himself at her feet, if you will consent to marry me. I love you already better than anyone in the world, she said, but now it is time to go back to your father, and we shall hear what he says about it. Oh, I'm just finally actually reading those comments because, like I said, it was a fat chunk of text I had to make sure I didn't get lost in. Changeling stories where they swap out children for fakes. Yeah, we just had the last one where we swapped out kids. So the prince gave her his hand and led her out, and they mounted the chariot together. It was even more splendid than before, and so was the whole company. Even the horses' shoes were of rubies with diamond nails, and I suppose that is the first time such a thing was ever seen. Head chopping part, I guess, like that was the cat cover, and then you break that open like a Russian nesting doll, and oh, there's a princess inside, maybe? I don't know. It's a thing that's been in different fairy tales, different places. Like literal tales with fairies. As the princess was as kind and clever as she was beautiful, you may imagine what a delightful journey the prince found it, for everything the princess said seemed to him quite charming. When they came near the castle where the brothers were to meet, the princess got into a chair, carried by 4 of the guards. It was hewn out of one splendid crystal, and had silken curtains, which she drew round her that she might not be seen. The prince saw his brothers walking upon the terrace, each with a lovely princess, and they came to meet him, asking if he had also found a wife. He said that he had found something much rarer, a white cat, at which they laughed very much, and asked him if he was afraid of being eaten up by the mice in the palace. You mice. And then they set out together for the town. Each prince and princess rode in a splendid carriage. The horses were decked with plumes of feathers and glittered with gold. After them came the youngest prince, and last of all the crystal chair, at which everybody looked with admiration and curiosity. When the courtiers saw them coming, they hastened to tell the king. "Are the ladies beautiful?" "Are the ladies beautiful?" he asked anxiously. And when they answered that nobody had ever before seen such lovely princesses, he seemed quite annoyed. However, he received them graciously, but found it impossible to choose between them. Then, turning to his youngest son, he said, "Have you come back alone after all?" "Your Majesty," replied the prince, "will find that in a crystal chair a little white cat, which has such soft paws and mews so prettily that I am sure you will be charmed with it." The king smiled and went to draw back the curtains himself, but at a touch from the princess the crystal shivered into 1,000 splinters, and there she stood in all her beauty. Her fair hair floated over her shoulders and was crowned with flowers, and her softly falling robe was of the purest white. She saluted the king gracefully, while a murmur of admiration rose from all around. "Sire," she said, "I am not come to deprive you of the throne you fill so worthily. I have already 6 kingdoms. Permit me to bestow one upon you, and upon each of your sons. I ask nothing but your friendship and your consent to my marriage with your youngest son. We shall still have 3 kingdoms left for ourselves." The king and all the courtiers could not conceal their joy and astonishment, and the marriage of the 3 princes was celebrated at once. The festivities lasted several months, and then each king and queen departed to their own kingdom and lived happily ever after. Really, though, he did get the best deal possible. Honestly, yeah, I got you. I love this story. I want to put a giant heart next to it. I love so many funky bits of it. It was, we started out where we referred to Puss in Boots, which was a story I didn't think that it was, compared to the Shrek universe that it is now. And it had the Beauty and the Beast, but gender swapped, and a cat instead of a beast thing, where the enchantment went over the whole group as well. And then the funkiness of the next nested story, her history wasn't just like Beauty and the Beast, it was also like the old Rapunzel or Rumpelstiltskin stories where you have to give up the kid. And this particular story, the writing had its own perspective, where a couple of times it said, and I forget where it said that, but the way it was written, here, I promise that the one who wrong. But not very often will the story have the narrative frame of it being an actual story from a particular person. And then, so you poor listeners had to have the bracket of me reading to you with interruptions from the chat and my own point of view. You had my bracket. And then you had this storyteller bracket, which truthfully didn't have many times where it referred to themselves. Oh yeah, here it is. When he was quite ready, I can assure you that he looked very different. Right there, the storyteller has their own identity. Usually they have sort of a omniscient step away. And then we had the way the cat princess was telling the story of her family, and then it wasn't just the queen. It wasn't just the queen talking. It was the person that was enchanting her. And so, you poor folks that had to listen to how many brackets of story within one. This would probably be a bit easier to follow if you could visually see each person telling the story, to be able to have those asides. Because there was a point where she refers to herself in her story, and that's when me, and so that must have been wild. Even though it had a lot of tasks one after another, it wasn't repetitive the way that yeah, true. This one, I mentioned earlier today, you get the you get the repetitions in these old fairy tales that they like to do the rule of 3, and they like to have the repetitions, so you just say the same thing because there's a deal of poetry. And there's lots of stories that will prioritize the poems or songs to read, but this one didn't feel as obvious with any of that. Thatch roof cottage, what is that? I can't even begin to try to pronounce that. Scheherazade? Scheherazade? I don't know what that refers to. I'd love for you to explain it to me, just because I would like to learn. But oh my gosh, this freaking story. What a wild ride. For those of you that joined late, the beginning of it had plenty of its stuff too. But like I said, because it had these chunks of it was this story and then it was that story. They're similar to those other stories we know better. It was a time. And then I love that the end, it was a princess that already had all of her kingdoms and was like, no, don't worry, nobody has to fight no more. The brothers don't have to kill each other for a seat, and they don't have to kill their dad to to get their kingdom to rule. I'll give these out. It's all good. Like, just save the day. Oh, well then I will be getting around to that one. 1001 Nights. That's actually on the list. I will learn it better. But heck yeah. I mean, I haven't read it yet, but if it sounds like that's exactly what this was. I'll list that one down right now so that I know that we need to get to that and that this will be like that. Scheherazade. Because I wasn't sure what the word was or how to pronounce it, I was like, is this a very long German word? I don't know what's happening. But now we know it's Middle Eastern. Good. No worries. Fetster got it. But if you want to explain more, you can. What I usually do between stories is either triggers as requested with the little list, or we just chat. So if any of you, very many people that joined us, have any of that, you can do that. Oh, awesome. Heck yeah. So, okay, then she's, of course, doing all of the different layers of stories. That's what I thought. Based on what Fetster said. Yeah, I can't wait to get to that then. That's going to be a lot of fun. Awesome. Woohoo. Because I've heard little bits from that, but have not done the full read. And that's what we're doing on this channel, so we'll do lots of that. You found all the links to those tail emotes. I would love to get those then. How should I do that? Do you want to just drop that for everybody? And I will copy and paste that into a new window for myself elsewhere. Yes, you can whisper them to me. I don't know how to do things, so if I need to give you permissions to whisper to me, I can do that. But I don't know how things work yet. I'm still learning. We'll find out. I haven't intentionally blocked them, so. But also, you have told me exactly what we're getting, so I know it's coming from you. Otherwise, if it was in chat, someone just dropped a link with no explanation, I'd probably be like, okay, nobody touched that. Stay far away. Perfect. There's them tail emotes. Oh my gosh. Thank you very much. I will be using that. Here's the next. Marvelous. Bless you, Fetster. We need that. For everybody else that's less often here on my streams, I'm making my own emotes. I'm learning all of that. I'm that new, and I'm trying to prep that up. I became affiliate just last day I was screening. Oh, they don't want us to modify them? Well, then I will stick to the other one, or I will use that stuff to learn. OMG, I'm cute. Thank you, Reginald, 2007. You mean when I talk about emotes, or that I'm new? I'm trying to learn what I should or shouldn't say. I'm very proud of the little modifying I did on my frogs. Dropping the frogs right here. Wait, where'd the other frog go? Where's Cry Frog? Oh no! Did something happen to my Cry Frog? I'll have to find. Oh, thank you. Sometimes I don't sound as cute. I'm sure I make little other comments that sound like I'm a trucker or something. But sometimes. Alright. Well, now, crowd. Many more people than I'm used to. If anybody has any trigger requests, like on my little list, please drop them, or we have a little bit more chat. I'm looking for which is the next story I'll do. We've got some options, and I want to read for maybe another half hour before I'm done today. So I'll see which stories will be good for that length. That one's kind of short. That's an interesting title, but that's also short. Okay. I could do the 2 of these shorter stories. I'll save the the double entendre title for the end. The comb. How have you not heard the comb yet, Fetster? Okay. Yes, we can do that. Let's do triggers. I haven't done any in a little bit. Okay. Wow. I was holding my mic, so now I have to readjust it, put it back. Oh, she's face planting. I'm sorry. Stop doing that. Avatar, you little... Okay. Here is the comb. Alright, Cage Nightwind. We love a lurker, but yeah, if you have to go, go ahead. Have a good night. Sleep well. Everybody else, if you're about to head off to bed, it's alright. See you another time, hopefully. Sleep well. Do we have any other trigger requests? I think I could probably do a page turner if nobody else says anything. That seems similar vibe. I'll do that. Oh, yeah. I can do that one. Here that one is. There was the tin in the plastic jar. Glad you look a little cozy, Fedster. Do you have any other requests? Cozy Death Noah 2, that's cute. Glad I can help out with the falling asleep. That's good, Reginald. The dice. Sure. Let's go to a dice. Is it down there? Okay. There we are. Trying to think what material they'd be. They look like they're resin. They sound a little harder than that. But they are sparkly blue and pink with gold numbering that I'm using right now. I actually talked about this in a different stream. I have 2 more pairs of dice that are green colorings, and one's a white and green with I think white numbering or gold numbering, and then the other is black and darker green. And so I'm giving 2 out of 3 of these, and then I will keep 1 pair, and I believe he said I get to keep the dark green and black. It's the set that I'll keep. But the quote-unquote bi dice, the bisexual colorings, I'm using right now just because they were the closest and in a useful bag for that. Okay, here they are. Alright, that was the dice. Okay. Are there any other requests? And tell me when we would like to go back to stories as well. I am always taking your guys' lead while I'm still new and such. Of course. And I keep the little trigger list up always, and I change it every now and then. If I'm not going to use a particular trigger just because I don't want to use things up, or because those items are just busy or dirty or something. But I'm trying to figure out what other ones I can do and such too. So I'm going to be opening it up to more things that people can ask, or if I should make a longer trigger list or something like that. And then I'll figure that out another time. Anyway, okay, from that it sounds like we're okay to go to the next story, if that is accurate. Okay, let's do that then. And we're doing this, and this is called The Water Lily, period. The Gold Spinners. So, not entirely what that means. That's it. And this is a fairly short one, but we'll jump into this. And I'll move my mic again so that my avatar stops doing the face planting thing. She's very sporadic. Okay, and we will sort things out more another time. Once upon a time, in a large forest, there lived an old woman and 3 maidens. They were all 3 beautiful, but the youngest was the fairest. Ooh, realized I'm holding that funny. Their hut was quite hidden by trees, and none saw their beauty but the sun by day. The moon in the night, and the stars in the sky, and the eyes of the stars. Oh, why is things being funny? The old woman kept the girls hard at work from morning till night, spinning gold flax into yarn. And when one distaff was empty, another was given to them. So they had no rest. The thread had to be fine and even, and when done, was locked up in a secret chamber by the old woman, who twice or thrice every summer went on journey. Before she went, she gave out work for each day of her absence, and always returned in the night, so that the girls never saw what she brought back with her. Neither would she tell them whence the gold flax came, nor what it was to be used for. Now, when the time came round for the old woman to set out on one of these journeys, she gave each maiden work for 6 days, with the usual warning, "Children, don't let your eyes wander, and on no account speak to a man, for if you do, your thread will lose its brightness, and misfortunes of all kinds will follow." They laughed at this oft-repeated caution, saying to each other, "How can our gold thread lose its brightness? And have we any chance of speaking to a man?" On the 3rd day after the old woman's departure, a young prince, hunting in the forest, got separated from his companions and completely lost. Weary of seeking his way, he flung himself down under a tree, leaving his horse to browse at will, and fell asleep. The sun had set when he awoke and became once more to try and find his way out of the forest. At last he perceived a narrow footpath, which he eagerly followed, and found that it led him to a small hut. The maidens who were sitting at the door of their hut for coolness saw him approaching, and the two elder were very much alarmed, for they remembered the old woman's warning. But the youngest said, "Never before have I seen anyone like him. Let me have one look." They entreated her to come in, but seeing that she would not, left her, and the prince, coming up, courteously greeted the maiden, and told her he had lost his way in the forest, and was both hungry and weary. She set food before him and was so delighted with his conversation that she forgot the old woman's caution and lingered for hours. In the meantime, the prince's companions sought him far and wide, but to no purpose, so they sent 2 messengers to tell the sad news to the king, who immediately ordered a regiment of cavalry and 1 of infantry to go look for him. After 3 days' search, they found the hut. The prince was still sitting by the door and had been so happy in the maiden's company that the time had seemed like a single hour. Before leaving, he promised to return and fetch her to his father's court, where he would make her his bride. When he had gone, she sat down to her wheel to make up for lost time, but was dismayed to find that her thread had lost its brightness. Her heart beat fast, and she wept bitterly, for she remembered the old woman's warning and knew not what misfortune might now befall her. The old woman returned in the night and knew by the tarnished thread what had happened in her absence. She was furiously angry and told the maiden that she had brought down misery both on herself and the prince. The maiden could not rest for thinking of this. At last she could bear it no longer and resolved to seek help from the prince. As a child she had learned to understand the speech of birds. This was now of great use for her, for seeing a raven pluming itself on a pine bough, she cried softly to it, "Dear bird, cleverest of all birds, hee, I'm a raven, as well as swiftest on wing, yeah, wilt thou help me?" "How can I help thee?" asked the raven. She answered, "Fly away until thou comest to a splendid town, where stands a king's palace. Seek out the king's son, and tell him that a great misfortune has befallen me." Then she told the raven how her thread had lost its brightness, how terribly angry the old woman was, and how she feared some great disaster. Good evening, greetings from Argentina. Hello. What is this redeemed highlight? I don't understand that, but cool. Yes. Thank you for joining us from Argentina. Where was I? I lost it, but I'll be fine. How she feared some disaster. The raven promised faithfully to do her bidding. Spreading its wings, flew away. The maiden now went home and worked hard all day at winding up the yarn her elder sisters had spun, for the old woman would let her spin no longer. Toward evening she heard the ravens caw, caw from the pine tree, and eagerly hastened thither to hear the answer. By great good fortune, the raven had found a wind wizard's son in the palace garden, who understood the speech of birds, and to him he had entrusted the message. When the prince heard it, he was very sorrowful, and took counsel with his friends how to free the maiden. Then he said to the wind wizard's son, "Beg the raven to fly quickly back to the maiden, and tell her to be ready on the 9th night, for then I will come and fetch her away." The wind wizard's son did this, and the raven flew so swiftly that it reached the hut that same evening. The maiden thanked the bird heartily and went home, telling no one what she had heard. As the 9th night drew near, she became very unhappy, for she feared lest some terrible mischance should arise and ruin all. On this night she crept quietly out of the house and waited, trembling, at some little distance from the hut. Presently she heard the muffled tramp of horses, and soon the armed troop appeared, led by the prince, who had prudently marked all the trees beforehand, in order to know the way. When he saw the maiden, he sprang from his horse, lifted her into the saddle, and then, mounting behind, rode homeward. The moon shone so brightly that they had no difficulty in seeing the marked trees. By and by, the coming of dawn loosened the tongues of all the birds, and had the prince only known what they were saying, or the maiden been listening, they might have been spared such sorrow. Oh no, but But they were thinking only of each other. When they came out of the forest, the sun was high in the heavens. Next morning, when the youngest girl did not come to her work, the old woman asked where she was. The sisters pretended not to know, but the old woman easily guessed what had happened, and as she was in a reality a wicked witch, determined to punish the fugitives, of course. Accordingly, she collected 9 different kinds of enchanter's nightshade, added some salt, which she first bewitched, and doing up all in a cloth into the shape of a fluffy ball, sent it after them on the wings of the wind, saying, "Whirlwind, mother of the wind, lend thy aid against her who sinned. Carry with thee this magic ball, cast her from his arms forever, bury her in the rippling river." At midday, the prince and his men came to a deep river, spanned by so narrow a bridge that only one rider could cross at a time. The horse on which the prince and the maiden were riding had just reached the middle when the magic ball flew by. The horse, in its fright, suddenly reared, and before anyone could stop it, flung the maiden into the swift current below. The prince tried to jump in after her, but his men held him back, and, in spite of his struggles, led him home, where for 6 weeks he shut himself in a secret chamber, and would neither eat nor drink, so great was his grief. At last he became so ill his life was despaired of, and in great alarm the king caused all the wizards of his country to be summoned, but none could cure him. At last the wind wizard's son said to the king, "Send for the old wizard from Finland. He knows more than all the wizards of your kingdom put together." A messenger was at once sent to Finland, and a week later the old wizard himself arrived on the wings of the wind. "Honored king," said the wizard, "the wind has blown this illness upon your son, and a magic ball has snatched away his beloved. This it is which makes him grieve so constantly. Let the wind blow upon him that it may blow away his sorrow." Then the king made his son go out into the wind, and he gradually recovered and told his father all. "Forget the maiden," said the king, "and take another bride." But the prince said he could never love another. A year afterward, he came suddenly upon the bridge where his beloved met her death. As he recalled the misfortune, he wept bitterly, and would have given all he possessed to have her once more alive. In the midst of his grief, he thought he heard a voice singing, and looked around, but could see no one. Then he heard the voice again, and it said, "Alas, bewitched and all forsaken, 'tis I must lie forever here. My beloved no thought has taken to free his bride that was so dear." He was greatly astonished, sprang from his horse, and looked everywhere to see if no one were hidden under the bridge, but no one was there. Then he noticed a yellow water lily floating on the surface of the water, half hidden by its broad leaves, but flowers do not sing, and in great surprise he waited, hoping to hear more. Then again the voice sang, "Alas, bewitched and all forsaken, 'tis I must lie forever here, belonged my beloved, no thought has taken to free his bride that was so dear." You'd think I'd be able to read that clearly when I had just read it, but oh well. The prince suddenly remembered the gold spinners and said to himself, "If I ride thither, who knows but that they could explain this to me?" He at once rode to the hut and found the 2 maidens at the fountain. He told them what had befallen their sister the year before, and how he had twice heard a strange song, but yet could see no singer. They said that the yellow water lily could be none other than their sister, who was not dead but transformed by the magic ball. Before he went to bed, the eldest made a cake of magic herbs, which she gave him to eat. In the night, he dreamed that he was living in the forest. And could understand all that the birds said to each other. Next morning he told this to the maidens, and they said that the charmed cake had caused it, and advised him to listen well to the birds and see what they could tell him. And when he had recovered his bride, they begged him to return and deliver them from their wretched bondage, because yes, they just spoke to a man, so now their thread will also be dimmed. "And he is to blame for all her misfortunes," added the magpie. "If he heeds only the words of men, she will remain a flower forever. She were soon delivered were the matter only laid before the old wizard of Finland." After hearing this, the prince wondered how he could get message conveyed to Finland. He heard one swallow say to another, "Come, let us fly to Finland. We can build better nests there." "Stop, kind friends," cried the prince. "Will you do something for me?" The birds consented, and he said, "Take 1,000 greetings from me to the wizard of Finland, and ask him how I may restore a maiden transformed into a flower to her own form." The swallows flew away, and the prince rode on to the bridge. There he waited, hoping to hear the song, but he heard nothing but the rushing of the water and the moaning of the wind, and disappointed rode home. Shortly after, he was sitting in the garden, thinking that the swallows must have forgotten his message, when he saw an eagle flying above him. The bird gradually descended until it perched on a tree close to the prince and said, "The wizard of Finland greets thee and bids me say that thou mayest free the maiden thus. Go to the river and smear thyself all over with mud. Then say, 'From a man into a crab,' and thou wilt become a crab. Plunge boldly into the water, swim as close as thou canst to the water lily's roots, and then loosen them from the mud and reeds. This done, fasten thy claws into the roots and rise with them to the surface. Let the water flow all over the flower and drift with the current until thou comest to a mountain ash tree on the left bank. There is near to a large stone. Stop there and say, 'From a crab into a man, from a water lily into a maiden,' and ye both will be restored to your own forms." Full of doubt and fear, the prince let some time pass before he was bold enough to attempt to rescue the maiden. Then a crow said to him, "Why dost thou hesitate? The old wizard has not told thee wrong. Neither have the birds deceived thee. Hasten and dry the maiden's tears." "Nothing worse than death can befall me," thought the prince, "and death is better than endless sorrow." So he mounted his horse and went to the bridge. Again he heard the water lilies lament, and hesitating no longer, smeared himself all over with mud, and saying, "From a man into a crab," plunged into the river. For one moment the water hissed in his ears, and then all was silent. He swam up to the plant and began to loosen its roots, but so firmly were they fixed in the mud and reeds that this took him a long time. Then he grasped them and rose to the surface, letting the water flow over the flower. The current carried them down the stream, but nowhere could he see the mountain ash. At last he did see it, and close by the large stone. Here he stopped and said, "From a crab into a man, from a water lily into a maiden," and to his delight found himself once more a prince, and the maiden was by his side. She was 10 times more beautiful than before, and wore a magnificent pale yellow robe sparkling with jewels. She thanked him for having freed her from the witch's cruel power, and willingly consented to marry him. But when they came to the bridge where he had left his horse, it was nowhere to be seen, for though the prince thought he had been a crab only a few hours, he had in reality been under the water for more than 10 days. While they were wondering how they should reach his father's court, they saw a splendid coach driven by 6 gaily caparisoned horses? I'm not sure the word. Caparisoned horses coming along the bank. Nice little pippet. In this they drove to the palace. The king and queen were at church weeping for their son, whom they had long mourned for dead. Great was their delight and astonishment when the prince entered, leading the beautiful maiden by the hand. The wedding was at once celebrated, and there was feasting and merrymaking throughout the kingdom for 6 weeks. Some time afterward, the prince and his bride were sitting in the garden, when a crow said to them, "Ungrateful creatures, have you forgotten the 2 poor maidens who helped you in your distress? Must they spin gold flax forever? Have no pity on the old witch. The 3 maidens are princesses whom she stole away when they were children together, with all their silver utensils, which she turned into gold flax." Yeah, it's a very long party, but that's classic for those days. Poison. So the witch did the bird still yelling. Poison were her fittest punishment. The prince was ashamed of having forgotten his promise and set out at once, and by great good fortune reached the hut when the old woman was away. The maidens had dreamed that he was coming, and were ready to go with him, but first they made a cake in which they put poison, and left it on a table where the old woman was likely to see it when she returned. She did see it, and though it looked so tempting that she greedily ate it up, and at once died. In the secret chamber were 50 wagon loads of gold flax, and much more was discovered buried. The hut was razed to the ground, and the prince and his bride and her 2 sisters all lived happily ever after. And the end. That was The White Lily, the Gold Spinners. There is no and to that one, and I think that's funny. But that was a nice story. What do you chat folks have to say to it? Or do you have any trigger requests? Cute white heart. Yeah, I enjoyed that one too. Oh wow, it is a little bit later than I thought it was. I wasn't paying attention to time. Alright folks, I will say I will either do some triggers if requested, or I will end this stream. It is after 2 a.m. for me. What time is it for you, Fetster? Yes, EST. Aha! Then you are not quite so late, but we would all probably benefit from sleep since it is a Monday tomorrow and some people have to be awake early and such. I pity them. I pity them, but also I'm envious. You have a consistent job, probably, that means. Yeah, you have to start early. That's no fun. I mean, unless you really like early mornings. I really don't. Our friend in Argentina, what time zone is that? What time are you in, Elias Munzon, if you're still here? Ah, yes. Oof. Then I am sorry. Good luck. You probably should go to bed. If you work tomorrow at least. Yeah, that's kind of about what I've been doing. A little more like 3 a.m. to noon, but still. Maybe more like 4 a.m. because it usually takes me a while to fall asleep. My brain is usually just still stuck on thinking of my own stories to come up with. Then I get all excited, and the next thing I know, it's 6 a.m. and I haven't done anything but think of things that I could do to tell stories. I am envious of falling asleep fast, and I am envious of sleeping quote-unquote regularish hours. My brain sleeps so much. Sometimes I wonder if the brain of a cat was downloaded into my body. Oh my gosh, if only I could. That must be so... that's so useful. No insomnia to be heard of. Ugh. Everybody attack Fetster if you have trouble falling asleep. Yell at them. They deserve it. No. It's nice when it happens. Yeah, I guess I can see that. Okay. An ad is about to start soon. When the other ads have come in... Oh, you do? What did you think of my comment of our, I don't even remember which story it was, but I remember saying that. Oh, it wasn't a story. It was was when Violet stormed in. Yeah. I think my avatar might be narcoleptic while I am not. I'm glad you thought it was funny. I mean, I certainly didn't say it with malice, so I wouldn't hope that it was intended that way. What? We have another ad about to start. With the other ads, have they interrupted, like have they taken away the video and audio? Or is it something like a banner that goes away? How does that work? Because people have said that they still hear me. Okay. Alright. Well, then that's about to happen, and I'm rolling my eyes very hard about that. Anyway. But, you don't get them with the sub? Oh, that makes all of the sense now. I was like, I don't know why people could still hear me then. It's in progress right now. I mean, that makes sense. I don't know why I didn't think that, but okay, there you go. I should have understood that, but I didn't. Okay, now I do. Thank you. I needed to know that. Well, I'm gonna go, but I'll wait for this ad to be properly done. Yes, they can do that, and I could have clicked that on, but I didn't do that. I have my ads manager, and it's the one that's been telling me when they happen, and it's done now. Yeah, exactly. But I've got that open in my little stream manager here tab, so I've been watching that. But alright. Yeah, and a bunch of viewers just disappeared with that ad because they know that I'm signing off and an ad just started. They're like, okay, I'm done. But okay. I will be going. Thank you for joining. Sleep well, everybody. Good luck with stuff tomorrow, and I'll be back on tomorrow for at least one stream. I should be here for both streams. And I'll do more stories, and now I know how to fix the face planting, and I'll keep troubleshooting these little things, and soon enough this will run smooth as butter. Oh, perfect. There you go. Thank you. Alrighty. Yes, Reginald. I wrap up at about 2 to 2:30, and this is that time. But like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. I do a 5:30 to 8 EST stream, and then I do my my brain 11 to 2, like now stream Sunday to Wednesdays. Yeah. Hopefully I see you in another, okay, bud? Good night, everybody, except those that are in different time zones. Then you have a good day. Sleep well or have a fun day. See you tomorrow.